Hey everybody, week 3 is here. Week 3 is on us, the episode is behind us, and we have a lot to talk about, as usual. I know you know that already. With me, as always, is Sean of House Beard. Shay is running production, as well as usual. Thanks to both of them for joining us all, and thanks to you for joining us all. Hoping for another excellent live stream. You guys have given us some questions in advance. We have plenty prepared, and of course, we have poured over all the details, as usual, leaving no stone unturned.
There's probably still some stones unturned. There's probably still some
we
out there.
Try to leave some stones unturned. What?
Super chat.
Oh, we have a super chat already. Okay, well, super chat from Jay Zate. Thanks, Jay. Viewed y'all's predictions and theories vid after the EP3 aired. It was a blast hearing on point, or how on point or off y'all were. Props to Sean's insight. Got most right. Yeah, that was something we're going to talk about. Thanks for bringing that up, Jay. We definitely enjoyed our first ever Saturday live stream. It was really good to compartmentalize the stuff that's coming. Today was the first day that I didn't think about what was coming. I mean, I couldn't help but think about it somewhat, but I was able to compartmentalize a lot of the what's coming next things, save those, because it's really hard to think about that. It's been less than 24 hours since the episode, and by moving that aside, we're able to focus even more on what actually happened, which makes it easier to predict what's coming too when you really have a good handle on what has good order to do things.
It's hard to separate the two, but it's easier to do the predictions the more you have time to stew over what's happened so far.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I had a little intro here, a couple of things I wanted to say to start off with. I think the name of the episode, of course, was The Queen's Justice, and that played out in a lot of different ways. Of course, Cersei, that was pretty obvious. Dany as well. Mostly her justice in her, case was her claim to the North and to the Seven Kingdoms in general. We didn't really consider the Queen of Thorns justice that much, did we?
Yep. I feel like that was, I don't know if I want to say obvious, but in retrospect, it's obvious.
It's funny because I didn't think of her as queen, but her nickname is Queen of Thorns. Like, oh, derp. Of course. She's, yeah. We thought about maybe Sansa as well, but she's not a queen, at least not yet. She didn't really deal out any justice, also not yet. Maybe that's coming. But we do see her very much running things, which is cool. The episode was full of layered misdirection. And what I mean by that is the trailers even kind of threw us off. And trailers are supposed to do that. Trailers, often they trick you. But I'd say this was another step up. Like, this was even more misdirection than usual. And that was fun. I like that. The misdirection game. And you'd think they'd be good at this too, because this is a show that's had to evolve through, leaks and the need for security that's far tighter than most shows. I mean, we got people taking drone photographs back when drones were expensive.
Never mind that. Even if there were no leaks, right? There's still the collective mind of the internet hyperanalyzing everything is still likely to come up with a lot of what's coming. So anything they give us to reaffirm that, I don't know if I want to say it ruins it, but it makes it a little less fun. It's a little more fun when we're trying to figure it out and can't be sure. It wouldn't be as fun if we can never figure anything out. I think that they're fairly tricky, if that makes sense.
Right on. And, something else I thought was interesting is that it was pretty clear we'd see Highgarden soon. And it was very clear we'd see Castle Rock in this episode. But still, it was surprising, kind of even knowing that was coming, to see two major castles that had never been seen before in the same episode. And that was like, oh, wow. And that was fun. I enjoyed being fooled. I enjoyed being surprised. And, like you said, we pour over the material so much. And you guys pour over the material so much. And we all talk about it. So many of the possibilities come out. Like, even if we don't nail the possibility, we probably mentioned it, not always, certainly not always, but using imagination, attention to detail, like Littlefinger's just fighting every battle all the time, friends with everyone's, enemies with everyone. That is how we think about it. Like, well, what if these two are friends? What if these two become enemies? And it was kind of a meta conversation that Littlefinger was having there, because it reflects how we think about the show quite a lot. But it's difficult because these characters change, they grow, their motivations change. I mean, we've got characters that have started off as 11 years old that are teenagers now, or teenagers that are now adults, and of course those characters are going to change.
I've made this analysis or comparison a bunch of times. It's like chess has all these pieces, and you learn how all the pieces work, and then you can kind of predict what they're going to do. Game of Thrones, this world, History of Westeros, Martin, D&D have established these players, these characters, these pieces on the board, and we, for the most part, know how they behave. And I think that's one thing I like about the show. These characters are pretty well developed. But there's so many of them, it's hard, even if you're good at chess, you can still only predict maybe 4 or 5 moves ahead. Like really good chess players can only really get 4 or 5 moves ahead. And I think that there's more pieces on the Game of Thrones board than there are on a chessboard.
That's true. There's certainly more than 2 queens.
Yeah. Certainly more than 2 kings.
And there's a lot more than 16 pawns. Okay, so, and then as far as, and talking about knowing, figuring out what's going to happen, here comes Bran just like, yep, I know everything. But, I can't explain it yet. But, hey, sister, how about your most awful moment? Remember that?
Yeah.
That was, yeah. That was a little funny.
I had some good moments, too. Why don't you bring those up?
Yeah.
Remember when I asked Joffrey who was going to lead the Vanguard? Did you see that moment?
Remember when I reduced Ramsay to stammering because I brought up bastardy? Why didn't you bring that up? Come on, dude. You're my brother.
Or is he?
Yeah, and we didn't. Yeah, he seems very different now. We'll talk about him in a minute. There was still no wall this episode, which is not a surprise.
Which means no Tormund.
Right, no Brotherhood, which is also not a surprise, that we certainly are wondering when they'll pop back in the story since it's been a minute. No Arya, so we got that prediction right, that Bran will come before Arya. So, by the way, we're not going to take any questions about any of those things because we have so much to cover. So no Arya questions, no Gendry or Brotherhood or Wall questions. But we will take those sort of questions for our predictions and theories episode on Saturday. So I'm going to mention that again. Saturday, we had our first ever predictions and theories episode, and it was awesome. So join us there, Saturday live stream. The thing is, we released it as a podcast afterwards, but only the main bulk of it, because there's just not enough time to get it out that same day and still give people time to listen to it on Sunday before the new episode comes out. So showing up for the live stream, you get a little more out of it. You can also ask questions, but we'll put it up for you shortly afterwards as soon as we can so you can catch up either way. Also, before we get started, a few shout outs. We now have 3 heads of the dragon, in addition to Lord Mark of House Joseph, the Snow and Winterfell, rider of Mazlacartho, a white dragon with green scales, horns, wings, and talons, which you can see on screen, Azani's wonderful art, which will need to be updated fairly soon. We also have Telenis the Talon, king of Gagassos, rider of Telarius, a red dragon with scales, horns, and talons of midnight black. And Jinx of House Lier, green queen of the Rainwood, rumored daughter of a woods witch, rider of Erogenia, a sylphic albino dragon with amethyst eyes and opalescent wings. And, of course, thanks to Jeff Gnarly the Long Snapper, History of Westeros' first sword. If you want to get in on the action with chats, you can certainly do that. We're seeing the comments here. Shaya's monitoring that. If you do a super chat, which is a paid question, make sure that we see it, and we will absolutely always answer a super chat. Because we're not going to, you're not going to give us money and just have us ignore that. Come on, we don't do that. All right, so let's get into the meat of it. First off, we have a question from Alicia Benson. Sean, what are you drinking? It's good that we're covering this ahead of time. Sometimes we forget.
It's actually the same mix that I had last time. The Naked Drink, they have a green protein mix mixed with green tea, mixed with standard Mountain Dew.
I don't know. I'm drinking coffee and sparkling ice again. My drinks are a lot more, standard.
Coffee and sparkling ice mixed together?
Hell no.
I'll try it.
I don't doubt it. Thanks again to Watchers on the Wall for the stills and images. We got a lot of our visuals from their work on collecting those things, and we use that for our predictions and theories episode. It's most of our own stuff for episodes like today and our book to show. That's mostly on Shaya. Thanks again to her. Let's start in the north. We've got Sansa taking charge. It was cool to see. I like seeing her giving out the orders, and good orders. Seems like she's smart. The whole grain arrangement thing is one of those logistical things that we talk about the show, just kind of glosses over that stuff a lot. So it's, and I don't expect it anymore. They dodge it so often. It doesn't even bother me when they don't do it. I just go, that's another thing I skipped. I'm just used to it. It's like Star Wars, where, we're all just used to the fact that stormtroopers can't shoot and you can see the bullets. I mean, you can't really complain about realism as far as action in Star Wars when they do that. And the same thing, like, if this is their pattern, they're not going to deal with logistics properly. You just got to accept it and move on. I mean, you'll have to. I accept it and move on as much as I can.
I struggle with it. Shows that make up for in other ways are the shows that I like.
Yeah, I mean, it bothers me. It takes a little effort for me to put it aside, but I do put it aside.
I want to say, although, I particularly like that scene because it's something I always want to see that they so rarely do, is a character that's supposed to be a good leader, show them be a good leader. Yes. Usually the way they show them be a good leader is fight with a sword. You know, but this was Sansa being a good leader. This is her, like, taking account of things, addressing issues, having knowledge, giving direction, so on and so on. It would have been so easy for them to have her be the queen and then sit in a room by herself, quote unquote, being a good leader. You know, she was out there doing the things a good leader does. They so rarely show us, we so rarely see characters do that. And I don't want to not Game of Thrones too much, but they're kind of guilty of it too. It's very rarely that you see Dany giving direction to her subordinates or almost any of the characters. And it's not unique to Game of Thrones. Almost any show. I think Lord of the Rings is an example I bring up a lot. It's one of the worst examples of all time. but this is one of the best examples of all time. So.
And to further that point, it's interesting. We have Sansa making good decisions and being a good leader, as far as we can tell so far. Meanwhile, we have Jon and Dany, who are quality leaders that have a lot of shortcomings. You know, maybe Sansa, we haven't had time for Sansa's shortcomings to come out as a leader. Well, we definitely haven't. But what I'm noticing is that Cersei's side right now has people who are really good at what they do. She's got a lot of good people in the right places, but she's still a bad leader because she's a terrible person and she treats people badly. And, you know, no one would want to be her subject if they had a choice. But, you know, on the other hand, Daenerys and Jon, who are worthy leaders because, you know, they make a lot of mistakes, tactical errors, leadership mistakes, but they have good intentions. They have very good intentions. They want to defend the realm. Sure, Dany wants to take the realm because she believes she's entitled to it, but she intends to treat everybody well. You know, that's, you know, it's a bit of a little from column A, a little from column B. But it's, regardless of what you think of Dany, it's pretty hard to say that she isn't doing a lot better than Cersei in terms of, like, morals, you know, and honor. And that's what I think is really interesting. Right now, the quote-unquote bad guys have all the talent, all the military talent right now. And Dany has good politicians on her side, but they keep screwing that up. Anyway, I got ahead of myself. We're talking about the North.
There's a couple points there that I want to bring up later. I want to compare Dany and Jon, and I want to compare Dany's position now as opposed to in the past.
Right. I was getting a little ahead of myself, but I wanted to compare all those three things together, and, you know, here at the beginning I think is the right place for that. But we'll get to the detail levels on some of those things later. So back to the North. Important to see that Jon Roy's still getting lines. That's our theory, is that one of the reasons they're giving him lines is because he's going to take over for Littlefinger after Littlefinger's killed. We may have started to see how this may start to play out. Littlefinger gives his interesting...
Real quick, before we go too deep, I want to point out, before he gets killed or otherwise removed, he might get exiled
Absolutely.
or run away or something.
100% true, yeah. He doesn't have to be killed. I'm guessing he's going to be killed, but you're right. It's not a sure thing. So this interesting thing that happens, first of all, Littlefinger gives this kind of game theory advice to Sansa, which we originally, back in the beginning, predicted maybe would be like his death speech. So it wasn't, clearly. But, as I said, some of this stuff is set up. Very curiously, Shay's going to pull this image up here. Very curious how the camera went right to Littlefinger's face when Maester Wolkan says that Lewin kept a copy of all Raven Scrolls. Now, that wording is super important. I saw a lot of confusion on this. We were confused about it at first as well. Here's something to remember. My first instinct after thinking about it was that he's worried about the letter that Lysa sent to Catelyn, where, you know, she basically blamed the Lannisters for the death of Jon Arryn, which we all know wasn't true, and Sansa knows the truth of that. However, Sansa doesn't know necessarily the truth of that. And you would ask, why is Lysa, you know, how can this letter matter if it's been burned? Well, the exact wording that Maester Wolkan said was Lewin kept a copy of all Raven Scrolls, very distinct, a copy. So it should exist. And that would be why Littlefinger is like, uh-oh. I better check that out. What kind of records do you have exactly?
Yeah, even aside from that particular letter, there may be some other ones. There may be a lot of things that might implicate Littlefinger in ways that he would not like.
You are correct. There's so the possibilities are really kind of limitless.
You know what, though? There also might be a lot of letters he would be interested in the information on.
That's true.
Even if there is something that might implicate him in some negative way, it might be too much of a project for someone to go through all that. You know, maybe he's more or less worried than he should based on the likelihood of someone being able to process all the information that exists. But he might want to process all the information that exists. That might be something he would like to get his hands on.
Yeah, and now especially with, or rather, speaking of, you know, infinite possibilities or so many, all those letters, think Bran comes on scene,
Yes.
and that's got to scare Littlefinger a little too if he can truly see everything. Now, they gave themselves an out, or at least a way to delay this, because one of the first things he says is he hasn't learned to focus, he hasn't learned to, like, sift through the noise, and if you can think back or imagine a number of different like superhero type shows or comics where someone has like telepathy, where they can hear thoughts, and when they first get the power, Legion comes to mind, where they just can't shut it out. Like they're hearing 1,000, 1,000,000 voices all at once, and they can't focus on any individual one of them. It's, to me, this is what's happening with Bran. He just can't. He's just overwhelmed. He can't seem to dial it down, and that's partly why he said one of the most awkward things he could have said to Sansa. It's like, why are you bringing that up? You know, but it's supposed to show, you know, how dark he is and how he's not really Bran anymore, right?
Yeah, that's what I took from that scene, is that he is the three-eyed raven now. Technically, he's in Bran's body. As a three-eyed raven, he recognizes that he's Bran and that Sansa's his sister. But he doesn't have the same sort of personal, emotional connection anymore. He feels as much pity or sympathy or love towards Sansa that the three-eyed raven would. Now, which is not zero. The three-eyed raven would feel bad about what happened to Sansa and would recognize that as a sister and brother that they would have an emotional bond. He would be aware of these things, but he wouldn't actually feel these emotions. And I think that came across in how Bran's character, or the actor, you know, delivered this, you know, kind of this thousand-eye stare. Thousand-yard stare.
1,000 eyes, that's good.
Yeah,
Nice
that
slip
thousand-eye
there.
stare, yeah.
That's really good. 1,000 eyes in one.
Just sort of his disconnect with what would be appropriate to talk to her, especially combined with what might be an overload of information in his mind. That might be a highlight moment. You could see how someone, like with all these flashes of images and emotions and memories going through Bran, that would stand out. It was a beautiful moment, you know, and it was a highlight moment of her life. He might not register how connected it is to some of the darker moments, you know.
Absolutely. Good call. And I think that as well, well, we have a lot, actually. Let me back up a little bit. I think this is maybe how they're going to delay things, but it's interesting because we thought Bran or maybe Sandor or maybe even Arya would come along to kind of out Littlefinger, and it looks like he may just out himself. Let's pull up this image of Bran as well, just to get a visual representation of what he's become. I think that, well, I would say some things about what I think is coming, but I think we're going to save that because I think there's a lot of what we know comes from the trailer for next episodes. We won't talk about that. There's definitely some things that might provide even more detail on him, but we'll save that for Saturday's live stream. But look at, Bran, it's just so different. I mean, he's just, it felt a little off to me. When I saw the scene, I get what they're trying to communicate there, but it didn't feel quite right to me. But how is it supposed to feel? Like, I don't know, like, you can't really have Bran's perspective. You can't, like, put yourself in Bran's shoes. You can kind of put yourself in Sansa's shoes, and that's hard. But Bran's shoes, like, that's just out of this world.
Well, in addition, okay, so there's a bunch of things. One, think how tough or awkward or impactful, whatever, this meeting would be, aside from some of the supernatural stuff, right? Look physically how different Bran is from the last time Sansa saw him. He's a different person,
Yes.
And so is Sansa. And so physically, her just registering how he looks now, and maybe floating back the idea that he's been paralyzed, that this tragedy has occurred to him has maybe not been active on her mind, but here it is back in front of her, that it wasn't just this thing that happened to him when he was a boy, that it's this thing that happened to him for the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm.
On and on. You can imagine the swirl of different emotions that they're going through here, and you see it on Sansa's face. She's clearly very emotive, whereas Bran's stone-faced.
Stone-faced Bran, yeah.
As hard as it might be to put yourself in Bran's shoes, it's also hard to put yourself in a three-eyed raven shoes.
Really, really hard.
Now we got to try to put ourselves in both of their shoes.
Yeah,
I think it might be weird and people might not like how this is going down, but I understand it, and I also don't know what people really expected either. Even if it wasn't for this, what seems to be presenting a shifting of his character in general to the Three-Eyed Raven, it still would have been tough to present this scene very well anyway, And I think everyone was expecting tears and hugs and emotions, right? And we only got half of that, so there's this disappointment. But I think it makes sense. Disappointing as it is, I think Bran's character is just gone. That's my take on this.
I think so too. Yeah, no, that's an astute observation. Like, to me, I was like, this is kind of awkward. But then I thought, then like you said, like, but what was I expecting? And I don't know what I was expecting. I definitely should not have expected a tearful reunion, at least on Bran's side. Sansa, absolutely, that makes total sense. But yeah, I don't know what I expected from Bran, but in retrospect, it does fit, even though it felt a little awkward.
Especially when you consider the scene we did get. It was a little, but that scene we got at the wall, he was pretty stone-faced and awkward there. By the way, I wish I could remember who to give credit to, but someone tweeted, Bran came back talking like Jaden Smith.
Yeah, that's perfectly true. We need an official Bran Jaden Smith Twitter account, typing every word in first letter capitalized, just saying, I can't explain it.
Batman
I told
Bran.
you it was hard to explain.
Yeah.
That would be really good. Someone do that, please. Okay. So that wasn't a long scene. There was a lot of nice setup in that scene, but it was pretty brief, and it seems like most of it is yet to come. Like that, there wasn't definitely not a lot of screen time on that. I can understand why Sansa walked away. So that would have been overwhelming for her. They just were not on the same page about anything. She's probably like, why? She's like trying to get along with like, I don't know what that means. She's like smiling, like being patient, like three-eyed raven, like what? What are you talking about? And then she's just like, you're kind of behaving slightly sociopathic, and now you're bringing up my psychopath husband in his worst night. Like, yeah, I'm out of here.
I didn't think of it till just now, but I can see why Jon cut Davos short on some of the supernatural explanation. Dany's already like took a heart to what's he talking about? Sansa's reacting to Bran kind of weird. Let's focus on reality. We'll get to the supernatural stuff later.
Okay, so let's go to Dragonstone. Let's move on to there. Obviously, if you had questions about Bran, maybe we'll be able to circle back to them. For now, let's move on to Dragonstone. I would say that it's a good thing Jon remembered to bring his wildling pants. Wildling pants. They just won't kneel. A lot of great dialogue and acting here, mixed with some, seriousness, with some good subtle undertones, with some good, like, realistic, what the kind of things they'd be concerned about, and a lot of humor. A lot of good, like, funny moments that kind of broke some of the tension. Jon's reaction to the dragons was cool. It was a fun moment, and his face was was pretty funny. Tyrion noting Sansa's intelligence, and Jon following up that she's starting to speak out, Yeah. That was funny. And then...
Let on, I think was the line. She doesn't let on how smart she is. She's starting to let on.
Yeah. That was really funny. Davos bringing up Missandei's birthplace was not funny. He thought he was just being friendly, and he probably didn't understand why he got the cold shoulder, but that's probably a painful memory. Like, Missandei was taken early as a slave, and probably doesn't have a lot of actual memories of Nath, and so that was kind of brought up the wrong thing there.
They wouldn't be fond memories, even if she did have actual memories.
Yeah. And, of course, there's more humor once they get inside. Missandei's reading of the titles as compared to, this is Jon Snow. He's king in the north. That's really good.
That was great, yeah. On a lot of levels, that was great, because not only was it humorous, but it also kind of demonstrates the difference in her characters. Jon's not there to prove what a badass he is. Dany seems to be everyone needs to know I'm the queen. Jon's not worried about that.
Yeah, and a cultural thing too. The North does have a simpler situation. Yeah. Like Ned came down to the South and was just overwhelmed by how court worked there. It was nothing like how it worked in the North, and that's kind of the same thing. Dany's upbringing and how she's handled herself and everything is more along the lines of Southern culture. Whereas Jon is that simple Northern attitude about everything, and he doesn't want a big, long title. He's not comfortable with it. It doesn't work for him, because he's not a guy that wanted to be king in the first place. And that comes up in another way. Tyrion says everyone wants to do what they're good at, and Jon's like, no, not me.
No, everyone likes what they everyone likes what they enjoy, right? And Jon, it might be good at killing, but he doesn't like it. He's in these positions where he has to do it. He's trained to do it as a boy, but he doesn't actually like doing it.
Yeah, and he's an inspiring leader, and he's not excited about that either. Yeah. He doesn't like the responsibility, but he takes it.
So this is a comparison that I wanted to make.
Okay.
Dany has been making move after move to get more power. She has this quest, this vision to be on the Iron Throne. And she makes all these moves to get more power. Now, along the way, she might help some people out. She might free some slaves. She might better herself. She might do some bad things. She might burn some people alive, etc., etc. Jon is on this quest to help people out. From the beginning, naive as it may have been, he wanted to go to the wall to protect everyone from the bad guys, you know? And he ends up with power. Jon has been seeking out responsibility and ends up gaining power.
Yes.
Dany has been seeking out power and has ended up with responsibility.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, and they're kind of coming together because there was some, there certainly was disagreement, and Tyrion helped out a lot. But there was right away there was some mutual respect. I think there was, they both started to get the picture of this. We have a lot in common. We have a lot of similar attitudes, a lot of difference in their upbringing, a lot of difference in their culture, a lot of difference in what's at their disposal, but similar attitudes towards how to treat people, towards what what the ultimate goals should be, and a lot of other things along the lines that bring them together. That Tyrion helped them realize that. So let's talk about Tyrion's back channeling. Now, we predicted that Tyrion would be dealing with Davos, but in retrospect, that didn't make a lot of sense because Tyrion and Jon already had a relationship, and that actually makes more sense. And so we probably should have realized that, but no big deal. Slightly off there.
Mm-hmm.
And did their initial meeting have that kind of Han Solo Lando vibe to it?
Yeah, it did.
That was cool. I like that. And patron Priscilla N noted that later, when they were on the cliffs together, it kind of was a harkening back to when they were chatting atop the wall. I did not catch that. Good catch. And it's really funny. It just reminds you, we talked about how Jon misses so many things, how he's, so much like his father, about his leadership style and his just disdain for politics to the point where he just is really thick with it. He's so not wanting to think about politics that he doesn't think about it at all.
Yeah.
And Tyrion's like, you really are just like, I really doesn't spell this out for you. Huh? He's like, you really going to give up that easily? Come on, man. Just there's a way to make this work. And Tyrion really does a lot to make that happen. His argument to Dany of, just give him the dragon glass. You don't need it. You don't care about it. It's a free roll. It'll bring you all closer together. He'll have more. He'll loosen up a little. He'll have less reason to be upset with you because you're giving him something and it costs you nothing. So really, it was really well done there.
There was another moment I liked there where Jon sort of realized, he was like, he's like, it baffles me. I can't believe it. I'm trying to tell everyone there's zombies coming. If someone came and told me there was a zombie coming, I'd be, what? Yeah, I probably won't believe it either. You don't believe me, do you, Tyrion? It kind of registered in his mind, and Tyrion says, look, you're asking for something that's unreasonable. Even if you're right, if someone else is right and came to you with this, you wouldn't just auto-accept it,
Yeah, and Jon walks off and like, wait, no, hold on, don't give up.
Yeah.
Let me tell you how to make it reasonable. Yeah.
Baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps. I see a comment from Eliana who says that bringing up, that you've been dead before, supernatural things like that, that's more of a second or third date kind of thing. That's a good point. Let's talk about Jon and Dany after Tyrion paves the road for them again. There's not much in the way of romance, which I like. I'm not against them getting together. I know a lot of people are, but I'm glad it wasn't just like, they just fall in love immediately. I really didn't want that to happen. It definitely did not. Dany kind of gave a gaze at Jon after she kind of dismissed him and didn't look at him when she's like, you better get to work, Jon. In response to, so you believe me now? Tyrion said yes. Tyrion believes him now, and he points out good reasons why he believes, because Mormont and him and all these other trustworthy people. But Dany wasn't willing to commit yet. She's like, yeah, I don't know. But she just kind of changed the subject. You better get started, but then she looks back at him as he's walking away. So maybe I think that was meant to give us a little bit of that vibe, but that's all. I didn't see anything else that remotely qualifies as like a...
I agree. I think maybe the seeds are set for it. I thought that Jon was going to show up, they would have their meeting, they would butt heads, get along or not, then he would go back. But it looks like he's staying. So maybe over the next episode or 2 episodes, maybe he will. She even at one point said, no, not her. Who was it? Someone told Jon, ask the other people. Ask them about me. Right? Someone said, see what they think, And I think we're going to get to see that. If Jon does stay and working his minds with the Dothraki, he'll get their perspective and maybe gain even more respect for her or whatever.
And it's interesting from Dany's perspective. Dany's never really... It's a lot of things to think about as far as everybody's perspectives and what they've seen and what they know and how they perceive all this. And there's a lot of that in the scene because you got to, from Jon's perspective, he realizes how difficult it is to convince anyone. And he even despairs over it. He's like, how am I ever going to convince anyone that this Night King is real? And he gets it. He's like, if someone told me this, I wouldn't doubt it. And he's despairing over how hard it's going to be to convince anyone of it. And on Dany's side of things, I think she was a little impressed, or at least surprised, because she's never really encountered another like person in a top level, a king or a queen or anyone who actually cares about her people, or his people. Dany hasn't seen that yet. She's been the only one that does. Yeah. Like she thinks about Cersei and about her father and the things that she, and the stories she's been told about some of the other leads. Like she's been given the wrong impression about Ned Stark and about Robert Baratheon and all this. But Varys straight out told her that Robert wasn't interested in ruling, and that was true, right? And so from her perspective, that's part of what fuels her. Some of it's entitlement, no doubt. But from her perspective, Westeros hasn't had a good leader in a long time. And so that's part of her drive. She's like, I should do this because no one else is qualified because they're all jerks. They're all cruel, and I'm not cruel. And so Jon threw her off a little bit because she's like, hey, this guy's kind of got that attitude too. And I think, you could see they started to respect that during the scenes. I
had another little thought here that you reminded me of. I wonder what Dany's perspective is of other leaders outside of Westeros, even like the leaders in Karth. They seemed, to whatever extent maybe they were good, they were also maybe arrogant, power-hungry, conniving. Paul Drogo, there was what seemed to be presented as this beautiful romantic, romance for the ages, but she tells Jon that she was raped.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if her perspective on her relationship with Drogo has changed. I wonder if how much
she's
she feels,
she's kind of figured it out,
Yeah.
As a teenager, she didn't maybe have that perspective.
Yeah. And how good of a leader was he? Maybe he was a great warrior and even a great war leader. But he's got his people literally fighting each other to death, and he rewards them by enabling rape. That's, what I mean? That's another one of her images of what a leader is. And
that's a good point. It was like basically one of her first encounters with like leadership out front like that, because she didn't ever really see her father in action. Well, not really. She totally didn't see him in action and any of that. So her early experiences in life were not dealing with kings and queens and leaders. She was, hiding from what she thought was, Robert's assassins, which, retrospect didn't actually happen, but until it happened in the show with Jorah. But before that, it didn't. Anyway, here's a question from Kabeth the Unfrozen, Lord of the Bricks and Castle Crimson Light. How is Dany going to react when she learns that Jon Snow has a better claim to the Iron Throne than she does? Well, it's not entirely clear that he does, because, there's still the whole he's a bastard argument, and that does, arguably put him lower than her. But if Rhaegar and Lyanna's marriage was official, well, how would you prove that it was? So it's hard to answer this question because I don't know that he does have a better claim. But let's assume he does. How would she react to that?
Real quick, let me ask, among Targaryens, outside Targaryens and Dornish, that the son, the male heir, gets it, right? But is that necessarily true for the Targaryens?
Okay, the way it's supposed to
Would
work...
a daughter of the king have it higher than a grandson of the king?
Well, here's the thing. It's tricky because in history, there's never been a queen of Westeros until Cersei. But it was the law was supposed to be that because the Andal culture is the dominant one, and the Andals have had the male primogeniture for so long, but the law is supposed to be that it passes to any male before a female, but it doesn't not pass to the female ever. And Jon isn't technically in the family. He's a bastard. Bastards are always skipped over. Now, again, I'll repeat the same thing I always say, which is that when there's a confusion among claims, the result isn't going to be decided by the legal scholars. It's going to be decided by swords, by blood and fire. That is what matters. When two people have a claim that one isn't clearly greater than the other, and sometimes even when one is clearly better than the other, it still comes down to armies. So I think a lot of times when we think about these legal claim things, and they really don't matter that much. They're interesting. I'm curious about them, but ultimately they don't matter that much.
They probably matter even less because I don't think Jon will want the throne anyway. He barely wants to be king of the North. He's just doing it for the sake of defeating the White Walkers.
That's a great point. Like, he's going to have to be told, you're the king, it's your responsibility. He's not going to be like, you're the king, do you want this? He'll be like, no. All right, we have almost 700 people watching now. Thanks very much for tuning in, everybody. This is awesome. We love having so many y'all join us, and it feels like a really big family here.
Did each of you tell 10 people in this past week? Is that are we going to get there?
We're still pretty short on 6,000 for our 24-hour stream, but hey, this is progress.
If we increase 100 each episode, no, that's not enough. One other quick note I wanted to make about Jon, or not just about Jon, the whole scenario with Jon trying to explain to people about this army of zombies.
Yeah.
It's one thing for someone to believe it. It's another for someone to realize what a problem it is. Does that make sense? Even if Tyrion's like, yeah, I believe it, Tyrion might have this image in his head of like 13 White Walkers droning along. Does that make sense? Or not even White Walkers, whites, just like mindless zombies bumbling along. Oh, that's really scary, but we're not really worried about that, right? Jon probably thinks a little differently of Dany's dragons now than he did the day before.
The fact
right?
that you saw them, you're
when
absolutely
you actually
right.
see it and how big they are, and there's 3 of them, it's like, oh wow, the dragons are no joke.
Yeah.
When someone actually sees these White Walkers, and that's another thing I wonder if it might happen, is someone from Dany's council maybe will come back with Jon for evidence. Does that make sense?
Or they maybe will go with, maybe Jorah.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Well, I meant go back from Dragonstone to the wall.
Go to the north. Okay. Yeah. Someone, a witness that she trusts. And it won't be Tyrion, because Tyrion's, not a military man. But Jorah would be a perfect candidate.
Yeah, especially given how fast people are traveling back and forth. I guess they would have to go from Dragonstone to the wall, and then at the wall not be able to send a raven, go back to Winterfell, then send a raven. They could do that in one episode, right?
Sure. Another thing I really liked about the scene was Jon's children shouldn't be blamed for the actions of their parents coming full circle, where Dany clearly has the same attitude. It's another thing for them to bond over and realize, okay, I like this. I like this person's attitude on that. And Jon had a good comeback. He's like, yeah, but the same applies to vows. Like, if you're not responsible for their actions, then you can't be responsible for their vows either. And this is a really important thing for them to agree on. I think it can be easily, I don't think anyone missed this, but you may have missed the impact of them agreeing on this, because this is an extremely progressive idea for Westeros. I mean, this is like my shirt, Blackwood. I'm wearing a Blackwood shirt. The Blackwoods are one of the best examples of a family that has not given up a grudge for thousands of years. I mean, this is really not how Westeros works. Ancestral traditions are everything. Look at Tarly and this is Tarly's. This is how we always are. It's all over the place. There must be a Stark in Winterfell. There's just all these traditions, and they're steeped in that. So Dany and Jon are really unique in that regard, and that's something that's really important for them to bond over, because it's such a rare quality, a rare attitude.
Maybe Bob Dylan is a bard in Westeros. These times are changing.
Tyrion echoes their line a little later when he says, "Good thing none of us are like our fathers." And in fact, that's important, because Tyrion, in the books a bit, it's talked about how Tyrion's becoming more and more like Tywin the farther he goes. But he's not at all like Tywin these days. He is not, but Jaime is. More on that later. Jon also seems to respect her for trying to kill as few innocents as possible, even though we've talked about why that maybe is misleading or misguided. But he brought that up. He's like, the only reason I can see that you haven't just swooped in and crushed everyone is because you care too. You don't want to kill those innocents. So that's yet another thing for them to bond over. And Dany, I think also, when she hears that Jon was elected, basically, that he didn't want it, and that it seems to be true, I think she respects that too, because he's not ruling for ego, he's ruling for acclaim. And that's kind of like for her, that's like that's kind of cool. So really a lot to unpack about that scene. And we're not done yet. As far as the Night King goes, we talked about that a bit already, but Tyrion, I got a couple of quotes here. Tyrion says, it was nonsense. It did seem like nonsense, but then Mormont saw them and you saw them. And to be fair, at that point, Jon hadn't seen them. And, so they were just saying, I believe they're real, but not from eyewitness accounts. It was just their believing in it.
I did see someone post a clip from the first season, maybe even the first episode, when Jaime is talking to Jon. And he's kind of prodding, he's kind of poking fun at him. He's like, yeah, good. Thanks so much for going up to the wall to help protect us from all the dark monsters up there. Thanks for doing that, little Jon,
And I liked another quote of Tyrion's that I like was, people's minds are made to solve problems like this. It's almost are not made to solve problems like this. It's almost a relief to face a familiar monster like Cersei. And that's a great point. People just, when we're confronted with something that doesn't fit in our reality, even in the real world, we just we struggle with it. We don't just and change our entire life philosophy and what we believe in. And you can't just do that on a whim. You can't just do that on a turnaround. And that's one of the things Jon was despairing of, and he realizes how difficult this problem is. And like you said earlier, this is why they didn't want to bring up the fact that he's also been killed and brought back. This is yet another thing that I can't possibly convince somebody is true. Even if he shows them the scar, maybe that scar, maybe
a surface cut.
A surface cut. It's easy to explain that. So
it also becomes a distraction having to explain that. Like, that, where does that get me? That's not, I don't care about that.
It doesn't lead to to defeating the Night King necessarily.
Oh, you came back from the dead? Okay, I'll send you my army, my dragons. Right?
Yeah.
Why don't you tell me right in the beginning?
Patron Roger Brault asked that same question. Why are they concealing this? And I think that's why. It's just too much. It's just too many things that are hard to believe. He also asked how they can keep this hidden. Well, it's going to be hard to keep that hidden because it's too, especially from, if Dany sends like a representative or two north, there's no way that's not coming up. There's no way.
Again, I think it's also similar to what we said in the past about this difference in Jon and Dany, or maybe other rulers, is that he's not searching for ways to prove how great he is, right?
Yes.
He doesn't attach everything he does to his to the end of his name. He's not trying to create a legacy for himself or whatever. Like, I don't mean to be picking on Dany too much, but she does make this big show of this long title describing every event of her life connected to her name every time she gets introduced to someone. Jon's like, I'm just Jon Snow. I guess I'm King of the North. I should let you know. He's not trying to say, and I also united the wildly. Like, Davos would do that for him. It's reminded me, by the way, of one of the panels I did at Con of Thrones. We were talking about sidekicks. One role the sidekicks have, Davos seems to be becoming Jon's sidekick, is that a lot of times you have different personalities paired against each other. This sort of stoic, strong, silent one gets paired up with someone. Now, it's ironic because Davos is also kind of a stoic, strong, silent one, but someone has to speak for Jon. Someone has to say the things that Jon won't say in order to let it be known who he is or whatever.
It might, and I see a Shan making a point in the chat that maybe it would work better. It's not, Jon's uncomfortable with this, but maybe it would work a little better if he was a little more like, I'm Jon Snow, son of Ned, like if he presented himself the way because that's the kind of thing she was used to. But maybe he's going to change her mind in the long run about this.
You do see that in the real world. A lot of leaders do have this sort of like alpha, outward attitude. And a lot of times they're putting on a show when they go home to their families, when they're drinking with their friends, they're just a regular guy. But they know they need to put on this front of being the badass leader or whatever. And I don't know if it's good or not for Jon to do that. Maybe it couldn't hurt, especially, know your audience. Euron seemed to shift his gears from when he's talking to his fellow Ironborn than when he's talking to the Queen in court,
And going back briefly to how hard it is to believe things, believe the thought of heart. Dany brings that up. She's like, what were they talking about when he said he took a knife in the heart? And Tyrion's like, figure speech.
Yeah.
Because they looked at each other when he said that too. Like, Jon looked at Davos like, and Dany and Tyrion kind of looked at each other like, what? And then other stuff happened, and they kind of came, he came back to it later. And this came up when they were discussing the current strategic situation. Like, first Dany makes this threat, you're in open rebellion. And then immediately Varys walks in and is like, oh, all your ships are gone. And she's like, y'all take a bath and some food, and let me revise that threat, because now I got too many problems. I can't go fighting you right now. That's why it's an empty threat, because she certainly can't afford to go attack the North right now. And of course, things aren't going that way at all. It does not look, no one's predicting the North and Dany are going to fight. No one that I believe, anyway. And here's an interesting point you made, too. So Jon, not yet, rather. Jon and Davos don't know about this yet. They don't know about this big setback. Presumably they'll learn. Presumably they will. But for now, they don't know. We'll see what happens. Here's an interesting point you made about how there's some juxtaposition here.
Yeah, I said in the beginning I wanted to compare the difference between Jon and Dany and their rise to power. Another thing to compare is Dany's current position now compared to before. Up to this moment, she had this massive, overwhelming army. She had basically 3 different land armies, a fleet, and an air force. Right?
Yes.
And now she's lost 2 of the land armies and the fleet.
Yes.
She's lost 3/5 of her army approximately, right? But her advisors were a translator, a spy, a captain, But now her advisors, if she picks up Jon, Davos, and Jorah heads there, she's now
filling out the roles.
Doubling her military,
she
more
really
than
needs
doubling her military advisors, but having lost more than half of her military. So it's interesting to see if or how much better she'll be able to wield what she has left over.
And Tyrion comes out and basically is, he comes out to brood. And he has that another really funny line that shows that gives the show a little self-awareness, showing that he's like, well, you look so much better brooding than I do. And it's been a thing forever. Jon and his brooding, he's like this handsome brooding guy. He's like some Keanu Reeves or something. And I think they're kind of laughing at themselves for that, because he is always brooding, you know. But not that he doesn't have good reason to. He's always, you know, he's got a hard life and a lot to handle.
I thought the brooding, by the way, was a lot better. It makes for a good cinematic moment when he's in his cape on the cliff sides. But I thought it was very well placed when he's in the conversation with Dany in the throne room. Several times he's kind of looking down. At one point, I thought it was really good subtle acting. He sort of like looks around the room. He's like realizing the stand that he's about to make, and it's controversial, maybe even dangerous. And he almost like he's checking to see who might throw a spear at him when he says, "No, I'm not here to bend the knee." His face had a lot of brooding through that, because he's recognizing what she's saying is right and fair. But what he's saying is right and fair too. And like, look, you said all this stuff and that's cool, but look, I've got stuff to say too, and I don't know how we're gonna get past this. And you see the frustration welling in him, and
it's clear that they both needed to understand each other better, and that's what Tyrion realized and started to facilitate.
But that brooding I appreciate more, because you get to see him say what he's brooding over, you know.
Yes, yes. Interestingly too, she expresses that her, like, what's going to hurt my dragons? You know, what's going to do that? And they're like, well, it's not the dragons. We're worried about you. An arrow could kill you. And because she's clearly thinking more like, I got to get out there. Like, this isn't going well. And she hasn't even learned about Castle Rock yet. So it sets up and Tyrion says nothing, which I think is a little bit, I have a little problem with Tyrion not saying anything about that. Tyrion knows more about the history of dragons than anyone. He should know how dragons can be shot out of the sky. So I think that was a small problem there.
He might have not said it because, you know, he doesn't want to...
He might bring it up later, yeah.
Right.
It's not too late. It's not too late.
One, how's Dany going to respond? If he says, is she going to be like, yeah, you're right, the dragons could get shot down? You know what I mean? Yeah. She's like, not my dragons, you know, she'll be resistant to accepting this argument, but maybe later in private when she's more calm and he can give him better data.
That makes sense. And then we go into, people are asking, why doesn't she just get out there and do stuff? Why doesn't she scout the ships? Why did Euron's sneak attack happen? Well, they actually explained that. It was a good one line of dialogue thing. They're like, no, you can't risk yourself. One arrow to you, and that's it. We're all doomed, you know. And I'm fine with that. I think that's a good exception, but I do think she's going to stop listening to that advice.
Does seem like she could have some scout ships, though. Something.
That's true. Although that's on her subcommanders. That's a lower level decision than hers. Like, she doesn't even.
Sansa would have done that if she was there.
Sansa would have done that. That's right. So more on that on the live stream Saturday, because there's some clues in the trailer as to what's coming next. Not just on whether she's going to risk herself or not, but just more about Dany's military situation. But in the meantime, it really does seem, or rather, on that same vein, it really does seem like Olenna was right, even though maybe for the wrong reasons, but Olenna was right, meaning that Dany's going to have to be a dragon, because this is not working. She's listening to the clever men, and the clever things aren't working.
There's other clever men out there also.
We are now over
and
700.
Women.
Yes, we are now over 700 live viewers. That is awesome. Thank you very much, everybody, for being with us, and we love you all. 2 thumbs up. I only had 1 thumb up because I'm holding a mouse, but there's the other one. Okay. So you noticed that Dothraki, the same, is that confirmed?
I got to give credit. I think it was Kim Renfro, our friend Kim Renfro, pointed out that that's the same Dothraki that had Dany when they found Dany in the middle of that field. When her dragon was hurt, and suddenly this Dothraki horde shows up. Later on, Jorah finds the ring and knows how to track it down. But when that horde is taking her to their call, that guy on horseback that had her, in the comments he made, you know, I can't remember the details of that conversation. I just remember that it was humorous. That's the same guy that now is like escorting Jon around, took Jon's sword.
Okay.
Coho, I think.
Cool. All right, that's neat. And this is hopeful. This is a seed of hope here, because we talked about how there's no Dothraki perspective, and that would be nice because they're in a foreign land with they're on an island. Like, this is so different for them. They're on guard duty. Like, none of this is familiar to them. I mean, maybe the guard duty is somewhat familiar, but like, they're just way out of their element. And
I'm really looking forward to, again, Jon staying here for an episode or two, down in those mines, getting the dragon glass, interacting with the Dothraki. I think we got some great scenes coming, I hope.
It was like, you've noticed my Dothraki. Like, they're hard to miss.
Yeah.
That was a good line. More on Dany's military. Theon is alive, as predicted. He gets pulled out of the sea. He's shamed by his fellow Ironborn, which was kind of expected. You know, we don't shame him, and Yara doesn't shame him. But it's expected that they would have a more hardline stance here. And a lot of you have that stance, too, and that's your call.
You got to be alive to shame or be shamed.
That's true.
Dead and shamed, or alive and shamed is better than dead, in my book.
Now, this also, it may have been that ship pulling up that Varys noticed, even though those scenes weren't in that order. Either way, I expect Theon will make his way back to Dragonstone. I guess, maybe not. Where else would he go? He can't go back to the Iron Islands. That's hostile to him. That's still under Euron's control. I guess there's a chance he goes back there for some other reason, but I really don't think so. So if he goes back to Dragonstone, maybe Jon sees him. Now, that if you think about it, that shouldn't be problematic, because Jon has talked to Sansa. Jon knows that Theon saved Sansa, and he knows that Bran and Rickon were alive from that. Now he knows that Rickon's dead. By the way, that's why there's some confusion on the 2 brothers versus 3 comment. That's why. He knows from multiple sources. It's not just Sansa. Just the fact that Rickon was killed proves that Theon was lying about killing Bran and Rickon. But he's also heard it directly from Sansa, who told it from Theon, because they had their time together. So there's a lot of ways for Jon to know this. This is all good. So we'll have to wait and see on Theon, because that was a real brief scene of him rescued. Wasn't much to say. We don't even know where he's going. Presumably Dragonstone again, but we'll have to see. So that's kind of...
I will say it didn't occur to me. It didn't even occur to me that Jon and Theon is another thing that we haven't seen since season 1. And it would be interesting to see their interactions with each other.
Yeah.
How much Theon might... even if on some level he's redeemed himself, which I'm sure people would argue about left and right, he still would feel the need to apologize to Jon, I imagine.
Yeah. Okay, so Varys and Melisandre. That was another cool side conversation, another scene here. A very meaningful moment. A lot to unpack here. Again, a lot happened on Dragonstone this episode. First of all, he comes up with that taste of power comment. You have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, when he said that, I think it's easy to think that, oh yeah, Varys has gotten a taste of power and now he's hungry for more. I don't know if I quite buy that, though. I think that was him throwing out something for Melisandre to latch onto so that he would know, yep, she's hungry for power.
He does, yeah.
He threw it out there and she didn't latch onto it. So I think on some level he gained a little bit of respect for her in that moment.
She certainly left him speechless, which is hard to do. That's Varys, after all, one of the best talkers in the entire series. But yeah, it didn't go like he thought. Like, he definitely has preconceived notions. He hates red priests and magic users and all that. You could see it kind of come out a little bit before, but he kept it under control, but it came out just a little bit when he was like, she serves Stannis, and then he's like, we forgave you for serving the wrong king. He's like, yeah, all right, got me. And yeah, it didn't go how he thought it would.
Real quick, I want to make a comparison I don't think I made before. In the same way that Varys usually is so calculating and intelligent and has it together, but in that moment kind of lost it a little, maybe said something, and if he had thought ahead of time, he would have known the rebuttal for it. Would have known he shouldn't have said that. But in a sort of emotional moment, he said it anyway. Can't help but compare that to Littlefinger, who probably shouldn't say something about loving Sansa, but in an emotional moment, he slipped up and said that anyway, and kind of got put in check for it, just like Varys did.
That's true.
Now, another thought I have on this that I've avoided thinking about too much, but the seed's been planted in my head, and I can't stop thinking about it. A lot of people out there think that Varys is some sort of a spy, that he is maybe betraying Dany. Maybe that's how Euron found out about the fleet.
It would explain a few things.
And I will say, at the end of that conversation, the way Melisandre said, just like you, you're going to die in
this strange country.
Yeah, Varys seemed to take that as a threat, and maybe it's because it was some sort of a threat. Maybe he's recognized she has real power, her prophecies, or something to believe in, even if he doesn't like or believe it. But maybe it's because he is up to something, and he's worried she's onto him,
It's dawning on me that is an episode, that is a theme of this episode, is people's preconceived notions being torn down. Varys about Melisandre, he's wrong about Melisandre. Dany and Jon were wrong about each other in a lot of ways, based on what they've been told ahead of time. Tyrion's understanding of a lot of things was wrong, like his understanding of some of the strategic elements. A lot of that.
Melisandre admitted to Varys that her perceptions of things were wrong.
Absolutely. So that's cool. That's a good little theme there. What else? Okay, so Mel says she's going back to Volantis. Now, personally, most of my thoughts on why she's going back to Volantis are going to come in the book to show subject, so I'm going to save a lot of that, but obviously whatever you have to say, we should cover that. But I will say that I kind of doubt that Kinvara is going to come. I know people are wondering if we'll see her again. Due to the law of conservation of characters, I'm guessing that when Melisandre comes back, she's not going to bring a bunch of known red priests with her. But, I don't have a super load of confidence in it. But I lean towards nah. Kinvara, she's a known actress. I think that was just her one-off.
I can imagine a couple things. I can imagine Melisandre comes back and just talks about conversations or visions she had there. I can imagine she comes back with Kinvara. I can imagine she comes back with an army that the Red Priests have raised to help turn this battle, especially if we build up to some sort of climactic ice versus fire thing in the north. Not even till next season, we might not see Melisandre again. We might get a scene of Melisandre and Volantis talking to Kinvara, which might include a vision or a prophecy or something. Again, this is like chess pieces on a board. It's hard to predict that many moves ahead. I have this sort of hope that Kinvara will come back into play because I think she was an intriguing character. So I like intriguing characters to stick around. I think Melisandre's an intriguing character, so I like to see her stick around, interacting with other intriguing characters. And because I strongly believe that there's this large undertone of the gods underneath the happenings of man, and it's a song of ice and fire, and I think that this would be a good way to kind of reinforce and bring things to a head down the road.
Cool, well said. One question here from Desolation Row. Good question. Why didn't Tyrion find it at all curious that Jon had deserted the Night Watch? Well, that might come up, and I think that might be how they weasel out the truth of Jon dying, because that's how he got out of his vows, by dying and coming back, and that's the technical reason that he was able to do that. So he's not deserting the Night's Watch. I think it just hasn't occurred to him yet. Maybe it'll be like, you know what? Wait a minute. Don't they take vows for life? Wait, how is... Yeah, you'd think maybe that would have been mentioned by now, but I don't mind that it wasn't because there's so many things to cover, and I think it will come up. I mean, Jon didn't even get like a close-up with the dragon yet. That's another thing we were hoping for. But he, like you said, he's still there. He didn't leave. So there's a lot more can happen in the next episode with regards to that and these other things that haven't been brought up yet.
I can also imagine it might have come up in a conversation off screen. They had a long walk along that walkway to get up to actual Dragonstone, and we heard him announce a bunch of other things. Jon had united the wildlings and so on and so on. So maybe connected to that, Tyrion might understand or be told, like, look, things have changed. Normally the vows, but everyone at the wall agreed. The wildlings are part of it now. You don't know what's going on, man. That's why we're here, you know?
I see a lot of people saying that I look like a garden gnome with this hat on. I don't know if that's what I was going for, but, you know, I'll be Tyrion. If I'm a garden gnome, I'm a garden gnome.
That's a wolf hat, not a Lannister, not a lion hat.
This is trying to make me look fierce. This doesn't work. All right, well, any more questions about Dragonstone? Fire them off if you have them. If you have a super chat, we'll come back to it. Shea is looking for questions that we need to handle now. Some of them we'll save for the Book to Show. By the way, the Book to Show episode is going to be Wednesday, not on Tuesday. A little more time for us to think about it, so that's cool. And all right, let's move on to the Citadel. The Citadel. Short. This is a little shorter this time. I was a little disappointed in how the Grayscale plot ended. I mean, maybe it hasn't ended, but it seems like it has. But I don't mind it too much because I think we maybe just missed the point of it. I mean, I definitely was like, that didn't amount to much at all. So I'm guessing the point was Sam and Jorah coming together. That's what's going to matter in the long run. Sam and Jorah, like Jorah's going to stand for Sam at some point. Like, yeah, I vouch for what he's saying. If he read it in a book and says it's true, I believe him because that's why I'm here, because of what he read in a book. Like, that kind of thing. That's my best guess. You got any other takes?
Well, there's a few other things I think happen here. Sam has now, I don't know how to say this, but proven himself to Ebrose.
Yeah.
And it seems almost like a punishment he's being given. Like, all right, I need you to rescribe all these books. But maybe there's something in those books he wants to share with them. Maybe these are books normally Sam wouldn't get to read. Mm-hmm. And this is his way of getting around the rules of the Citadel to give Sam some secret information.
That's clever. Either way, I expect that something will come out of those things. That busy work is going to turn into something important. Is going to come from that busy work. I think a lot of people caught that thread, and I totally agree with it.
I do see some legitimate complaints about how quickly they're like, oh wow, it looks like you're fine. Go ahead, you're free. You know,
yeah, it was kind of weak.
And I think they almost trapped themselves into that when they said, but I'll give you till tomorrow since you're a knight or whatever. You know, like I think if that had been, and I can even in my mind stretch out how maybe the next day when he came, he saw he had made significant, like he was like, what's going on? Okay, I'll give you another day. And maybe Sam went back every night for 3 or 4 nights in a row. And they kept it secret, and the maester had to keep, well, I'll wait another day. I'm suspicious something is up, you know. Maybe it wasn't just over 24 hours like they showed it. I wish they could have given us another line of dialogue or another scene to demonstrate that better. But like a lot of things along this line, I understand how and why they do it just to progress the plot. They could have made this happen in a way that would make more sense, and it would have taken a whole bunch of more scenes that, part of me wants to say they don't have the time for it. Doggone it, they do have the time for it. They could have had 10 episodes. But of course, we're all going to complain. Excuse me, we're all going to complain about wanting more material, and this is one of the reasons why we want more material, so they can flesh scenes like this out. And I understand that they're not morons. They must know some problems with the scene, but there's just timing and budgetary constraints. They get across what's important. I can accept this and move on.
Yeah, I mean, I see some people say, stop making excuses for bad writing. We're not making excuses for bad writing. We're criticizing the scene. We're just finding the good in it. It wasn't a complete waste. For example, Ian Glenn's acting was fantastic. The look on his face when Sam offered him simple human contact, something that he thought he would never have again. That is super meaningful. And Ian Glenn's face, which Shea is going to pull up for, still doesn't capture it all, but I want to remind you of it. Go back and look at it. He transmitted it so well, and I thought that really helped save the scene for me. Because, yeah, I was disappointed with some of the resolution of it, but that really helped. And it goes to show that, yeah, even if the writing is bad in a scene, if the acting can save it, or at least make it, well, that was bad, but that was good, or at least, so, and I think that happened here. So, not great writing, great acting. And I, like Stannis, can point to one, and not have it matter about the other. So we can criticize one and praise the other, and there you go. Anyway, all right. So we had another prediction here that seemed to fail. We thought that maybe Sam would give Heartsbane to Jorah, but that was a parting. They were parting.
It seemed like it. Yeah.
Maybe later, maybe way down the line, but it didn't happen in the short term, and that means it's probably a lot less likely to happen at all. It's not the theory percentage isn't down to 0, but it got reduced to tiny, to almost not.
By the way, if the Charlie's role in the war, at least in the short term, maybe that's up. Maybe now Dickon gets sent to Old Town and pick that sword back up, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, now that they've cleared out Olenna, they can.
They had to make this trip to see the Queen. Now, after seeing the Queen, now we have to make this siege on Highgarden. Now Highgarden's taken. I could see Randall saying, "All right, Dickon, go down to Old Town and get my sword back."
Super chat from Brandy Mandazzo. Brandy, we don't see a question, so if you want to send that into the chat box, if you did have a question, go ahead and do that. Shea will point it out to us. Otherwise, well, either way, rather, thank you very much. And yeah, so we have a question from Glowing Girl. Dany will need a maester eventually. Yes, absolutely. She doesn't have one yet. We always figured that Sam would go and be the maester back at the Wall. I don't suppose he'll be Dany's maester instead. It's got to be possible, though. And yeah, I don't know who else it might be. There's not like a lot of named maesters or anything. We do have the question from Brandy Mandato here. What do we think the show is trying to say with the cure being so easy? The Citadel is hiding information from the general public? Sam is just really good at following directions? I don't know. I think that like a lot of people saying it might have just been kind of not great writing. But if we want to be generous and try to look for other reasons, it might just be, I think they might be setting up Sam as more intelligent, like a cut above. Maybe he's just a little smarter. Maybe he's, a natural, at a lot of these things. But I don't think it's the Citadel hiding things. I don't think it's that. Oh, that's certainly a reasonable guess because there's certain book topics that, go that way. And I will have more to say about this in the book to show because I don't think Grayscale is going to go nearly this easy in the show. But I'll save some of that for the book to show. Or sorry, in the book. So in the book to show episode, I'll have more to say about that, and maybe Lady Gwyn and Shea and Yolkboy may as well.
I can also imagine Jorah might contend with you about how easy it was. And I can also imagine that maybe it's Sam did a better job of piecing together information from different books about how to do the procedure that other maesters hadn't put together. Also, maybe it hasn't been a priority. Like, there's probably a lot of different diseases and a lot of different endeavors and healing arts and so on and so on that are being focused on. And this one hasn't been a problem for a while. And so they haven't focused on it recently, and now here comes Sam focusing on it when the other maesters are focusing on other things like alcohol, liver disease, or something like that. Maybe that's a more pressing issue for Ebrose is liver disease because there's so much drinking, and that's where his focuses and other maesters' focuses have been. But here comes Sam digging up this old thing that people haven't worried about in a long time, and hey, he figured something out. Well, maybe I was going to say maybe we should have looked at this, but maybe we shouldn't have looked at this because it doesn't really matter. It's not a thing we're worried about right now.
Yeah, because they were. It wasn't a big problem. I see. Arnt Dog or Amt Dog. I don't know how to say this. Suggests that Sam maybe has hands like a surgeon. Sure, maybe he's, yeah, like I said, some of the implication here is that he's just really talented.
You gain a steady hand on the wall, not working in Old Town.
Get a steady hand if your hands are made of stone. Oh! That's pretty good. Okay, so that's probably all we have to say about the Citadel. Seems like we'll be seeing Jorah pop up at Dragonstone at some point. Maybe not enough. Maybe not for an episode or two. That's going to be up to them to decide when he goes there or not. They'll have to wait on how they decide to write this. So, okay, so we'll probably go over 2 hours as we often do, but we'll call this the halfway point in terms of doing some shout-outs as we often do. So let's start off, or let's rather not start off, but let's do a shout-out for our Northern Champions. That includes Jay Wilson, Winter's King, Sir Stephen, the Hammer of the North, Winter's King, Lord of the First Men, Lady Ardross, Mother of Wolves, Sir Daniel, the Sneaky Russian, Sir Brian the Returned, Knight of the Last House, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Blade Red Song. Sir Kobe of House Stonesmith, words are wind, deeds are stone. Now, we announced recently that we had some new Patreon levels. We had a Queen's Guard, a Queen's Council, a Hand of the Beard, Queen's High Council. Very sorry, I said that wrong. Beard Guard, and all these other things. Well, the Queen's Guard is full. There's still slots in the Beard Guard. There's still slots in all the other ones. But the Queen's Guard filled really fast, so thanks, y'all, for that. That's really cool. We'll get you some shout-outs soon from Ashea.
Shay, it's the Queen's High Council. Is it the Queen's Guard or the Queen's High Guard?
We should change it to the Queen's High Guard, I suppose. But currently, it's the Queen's Guard. Good point, Sean. Okay, so let us move on after that brief interruption.
I want to clarify something. I've seen some questions. Yes, I can dance. Doggone it, and I love to dance.
Sure, this is maybe not the best. We don't have room for it, but one day we'll get y'all some footage.
In the 6-hour stream, I promise.
Yeah, in the 6-hour,
24-hour
stream, that would definitely happen. People who went to Con of Thrones saw Sean dance.
That's right.
At least some people did.
There's some witnesses out there.
This dude can do handstands and everything. It's no joke. All right, let us move on to King's Landing. So we'll start with Euron's triumph. He really played up the moment. You know, this is pretty cool. He points out, people cheering for a Greyjoy, you know, and that was kind of a nice thing to point out because it's true. Has that ever happened?
Outside the Iron Islands.
Yeah, exactly, outside of the Iron Islands. And he brings up, it's like, it must be nice to have the love of the people. Something you wouldn't understand, Jaime. And Jaime should have just said nothing, because anytime he opens his mouth, Euron just wins. Like, they just love, you know, it's like, oh, it could be your head on a spike. He's like, or mine. He's like, or yours. They just love severed heads, really. Like, that was so good. He just owns him with the dialogue there. Really well done.
It was a good point Jaime made, is it wasn't long ago that Cersei was being paraded through the streets, you know, and having things thrown at her. So if Euron could go through the streets being praised now, he could go through the streets having stuff thrown at him later. But
Euron's like, yeah, I know. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Don't you? Like, are you just now figuring that out? Because I knew that already. That's kind of what I got from that.
Well, Jaime made a good point. Euron had like 3 more good points raring to go.
Okay, so let's talk about this triumph. He brings in the 3, and as we predicted, the 2 the Sand Snake and Ilaria were the gift, and he kept Yara for himself. He brought her in to march her in there to show it, but he kept her. He didn't offer her, and then he marched her right back out. So that went pretty much how we thought. And, you know, it's funny thinking about the... looks like we have a super chat from the Snow and Winterfell. Hey, Mark, thanks for that. Great show as always. Got to put the kids to bed. Be back later is possible. My nominations for best lines: Jon to Tyrion. She's starting to let on about Sansa, and does she like a finger in the bum from Euron? The way his eyes got so big when he said that, and the way Jaime had another of his like, I can't believe he's. What do I do? What do I say to that? You know, he just.
Again, I feel bad for not being able to give proper credit, but someone tweeted, Jaime's teeth must be ground to a stone.
Yeah, he's putting Stannis to shame. Stannis and his teeth grinding is a major factor in the books. It's brought up a lot. You don't really see it in the show because it's hard to show that, you know.
Jaime's showing it.
But Jaime was, they gave Stannis his teeth grinding to Jaime. And so, you know, we talked about how a lot of times they fool us with those, you know, the words they give out, the trailer spiel, the Cersei returns a gift. They definitely played with the wording this time because it really wasn't returning a gift. It's more like returning the favor. You know, like she gave the same gift, but Myrcella wasn't given a gift. Unless maybe the House of Black and White would call it a gift, the gift of mercy. But I don't think Myrcella was in need of mercy at the time. Anyway, that quibble aside, it was neat because I noticed the lipstick. I noticed her odd shade of lipstick, but it did not connect the dots until it happened. And at that point, everyone knows what's happening. So that was cool. That was another good example of the answer was right in front of us, but I totally missed it, partly because of the intensity of the scene. And Lena Headey was just killing it with her acting there, too. So was Ilaria.
Yeah, yeah. The scene, it didn't take that long, but it was still sort of fun for me. Like when the scene starts and Cersei has lipstick on, I remember in my mind thinking, Cersei's wearing some lipstick. That's a new thing. Yeah. And I thought it was in my mind, and someone in the room with us watching it said out loud, "What's up with Cersei's lipstick?" And right at that moment, I was like, "She's gonna poison Tyene. She's gonna poison her."
That's so cool. That was sneaky.
It's neat how when someone says something out loud, how much a thought can just instantly be clarified in your mind.
Yeah, so that was really cool the way they came together, and it was harsh, it was brutal, and like you made a good point here about Tyrion telling Jon to accept who he is, right?
Yeah, that's right. In the later scene when Jaime and Cersei are together, and there's a knock on her door, and Jaime's like, "Don't," and Cersei just gives no F's, just instantly, just like, "I'm just gonna go get the door." I'm surprised she even got dressed for it,
Yeah.
And Jaime is aghast. One, my thought was Tyrion told Jon, like, "Look, you're a bastard. You're a bastard. If you're embarrassed by it, people will take advantage of you for that. If you just own it, no one can make you feel bad over it. Just own it." And I think that's where Cersei's at. She's like, this thing has been like a shame for them, where in her mind at least, it should be like this point of pride, or this a defining part of her life and her emotions and everything else is this relationship, and she's always had to hide it, and she's largely had to hide it from her father and from the other powers that be. Well, now the other powers that be have been defeated and her father is gone. Like, what is she worried about?
Yeah.
And not to say that there isn't nothing to worry about or that she shouldn't still try to hide it, but I can see where she's at. Tyrion would see where she's at. Jaime doesn't necessarily. Who knows what will come of this? But I just thought it was a neat evolution and parallel.
I agree. I'm going to have more to say about the evolution of these two characters as well, but just to point out for right now, Cersei's always been, the queen or the queen regent or the queen mother, but she's never been the queen, and that is really different. She's always had someone else above her, someone else she's had to either argue with or fight or push to get what she wanted. Now, all that's removed. She can say she can do what she wants. She can do it all, and that's pretty cool. But let's take a look at, and that leads into this next bit, which we've been saying. We're not nearly the only ones that are saying this, but Cersei's becoming the Mad Queen a bit, and this way that she handles the gift to Ilaria and Tyene is absolutely shades of the Mad King, absolutely shades of Rickard and Brandon, something that we predicted. But this whole thing about her not caring about who knows about the incest and that she's with her brother, that ties into that. She's like, I've got all this power. What can happen to me? She's a little bit drunk on power. And remember that this comes right after the torture scene. Right after she leaves, she immediately goes and has sex with Jaime. And that is exactly from the books. Well, not exactly, but Aerys, when he burns his hand, well, one of his hands, not his his hand to the king, his latest hand to the king at that point, he immediately goes upstairs and has really rough sex with his wife. He's basically raping her. Not basically. He's raping her. He's hurting her. And Jaime's is standing on guard outside going, what do we do? And this fellow Kingsguard is like, we took a pledge to protect her, but not from him. So I'll have more to say about that on the book to show, but that's also when Dany was conceived, most likely. So that's just a little side tidbit there. But it's so similar. Like, she murders people or sets them up for this horrible cruelty, and then immediately is like she's turned on by that.
It's also worth noting on some level she might recognize she needs to repair some damage with Jaime, because she also just told Euron that she'd marry him. So
yes, and that made a big difference, because Jaime did, it kind of did bring her. He was like no, and as a bit of self-awareness, they may have been hearkening back to Jaime forcing himself on her in the Sept, right? And this was different, but it was similar, and so that's interesting. But
she did even physically remove his hand.
Yeah.
She specifically, I don't know how to say this, but physically disabled him, forced herself on him.
Now, to be fair, it's harder to force somebody when you're the weaker one. Like Jaime could if he wanted to, he could overpower her. He's stronger, but still, there wasn't consent there, and he, she had
at
her
least
way.
not at first.
Not at first. Yeah, he yielded to it.
Which might be argued with Jaime and Cersei.
Yes,
in the
that's very true. But the bottom line is it had a positive, quote unquote, positive impact on Jaime's attitude towards Cersei. It seemed to kind of heal a lot of the damage, especially later, as you hear with Olenna scene, which we'll certainly get to. But I'll bring up a little bit of that now, which is that Olenna just kind of realizes you're just in love with her. Like, you just aren't seeing this clearly. And that's important to keep in mind that, yeah, why does Jaime do that? Why does Jaime blah? He's not seeing it clearly. He's super biased towards Cersei. He flat out says to Olenna, once she kills all her enemies, no one's going to quibble over how she made the realm peaceful. He thinks this has a good ending. He thinks this will end in a good realm. If he were really to think about it, he might realize how stupid he is. But it just shows how much he's in love with his sister.
People do that in general. There's a lot of times you're on a course, especially when it's connected to a relationship, especially a romantic relationship, that it's hard to veer from. You've sold yourself on it already. You've told yourself a bunch of lies. Even on some level, if you recognize the issues with it, let's say that he was actively aware that he's biased because he's in love with her, that she's done these terrible things, the plan maybe isn't that good. So let's say he comes to these realizations. And so he decides what?
Mm-hmm.
What am I supposed to do? Kill her? Run away? Join Dan? Like, even other things he's supposed to do are very difficult, and both emotionally and physically for him to do. And hard to plot out, or et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't mean he's doing the right thing, but it does. I am pointing out that he might not realize. He might realize that he's not doing the right thing, but hasn't figured out what the right thing is. Does that make sense? And so until then, he's going to justify this and keep on his current course, which isn't like some weird, crazy thing about Jaime. That's what people do,
For that, we have a question from Jay Beach. Do you think Ilaria will exit the cell at some point, but it is not the same driven mad by watching her daughter rot? Well, no, but I got to say, the reason I think no is because Indira Varma confirmed that's the end of her arc. So, I was thinking maybe like if King's Landing is eventually liberated, they'd find her down there and she'd still be alive. But I guess they're not going to do that. Maybe they're just going to give her that cameo and she's not aware that they're going to hire her for that. But it sounds like she's just done. It sounds like and I can kind of understand that, because maybe even if she's alive, maybe she's just mentally broken after this experience. I wouldn't put, that seems like a reasonable thing. Like, it's what a horrible, not that she didn't do horrible things herself, but this is pretty horrible. This is a pretty horrible end, and it would have, a permanent impact on her psyche, seeing her daughter slowly rot away, which I see someone pointing out in the chat, pretty good astute observation, that Cersei points out that she can't sleep, and she's just seeing this stuff in her head. Well, Cersei's like, you're going to see this stuff straight up, not just in your head. It's going to be right in front of you. And that's Cersei being Cersei.
Can you scroll up?
Yes. We have another, I want to give a little hat tip to Joanna Robinson of Vanity Fair. That serving girl that comes to knock on the door. Two things about that. One, that this is what Joanna caught, was that is the same serving girl. We've seen her before. So, but she had longer hair. So
a different haircut.
So apparently that haircut is all vogue now at the Red Keep. All the women in the Red Keep are cutting their hair like Cersei. Nice catch. Nice catch.
I've seen a lot of people online comparing her to a Romulan woman. And I have given and Cersei's haircut is being called the Cersei, and I'm nicknaming Cersei Blonde Rom.
Okay, so apparently it was Acoustic Noise Machine who made the connection between the nightmares and Ilaria's deaths, or Ilaria's punishment. So that, good catch there, very good catch. And also, but back to the serving girl. Anytime you see a serving girl get a line, it sends up alarm bells for Arya. Like, obviously that's not Arya right now, but this could be what we're getting set up for. Like, if we see the serving girl again, I'm going to be like 99% that Arya is going to eventually take that serving girl's place and kill Cersei. I don't think that's anytime soon, though. Cersei's got a lot more to do in the short term, and maybe even in the long term. Although there isn't really a long term.
Arya is also heading in different directions, but...
Yeah. Now, there's still more here. We have the Iron Bank. Great banter between these two as well. I really like that. Or did I miss something that you wanted to talk about?
I think so. I can't... I wanted to look real quick because I couldn't quite remember. I felt like I missed something.
It's too far. It's too far back if we're going back that far. Let's move on.
Okay.
Okay, so Iron Bank. Yeah, so he like Iron Banker's very coy here. He doesn't commit to anything. This was a big point of contention for a lot of people. The whole issue of slavery and Bravos. Okay, so in the books, Bravos is very anti-slavery. It's how they were founded, and the Iron Bank, holds those ideals. Okay, two things about that. One, it was not actually confirmed in this episode that the Iron Bank is deep in slavery. Cersei brings it up like, "Oh, y'all were hurt by the slave trade tech going down, huh?" And he's like, "It was, it did take a hit." He didn't confirm at all that they had their finger in it. However, even if they do, I don't have a problem with it. The idea that a long-standing institution would lose its ideals over profit motive is totally in line with reality, real world or Westeros. And even if he wasn't committing to the slave trade, which I think he wasn't, the economy, the downturn in the economy would impact them regardless of whether they have direct investments in the slave trade. So she's right, even if she's not directly right, that the slave trade, losing it hurts them. And so you don't have to assume that they're definitely dealing in the slave trade. So I think that's an important thing to clear up. A lot of people are kind of upset with how they handled that. And I was jarring, no doubt. But I think, upon reflection, it totally fits. I have zero problem with it.
It's also possible that, however right or wrong she is, that this character is humoring her.
Yes.
He doesn't necessarily want to squabble over the details of some minor percentage of their overall profits, whatever. Look, where's my money?
He wants the best deal possible because he feels like obviously what's going to happen is if she pays him back, which it looks like she might, they're going to continue to support her because she's proved. It's like proof of concept. It's like, okay, this is a solid investment, and that's kind of what they brought up. So I think that's kind of the way it's heading. And he multiple times brings up how she's kind of like her father, and that was kind of a way to flatter. And that's true in a lot of ways. But really, so is Jaime. Jaime, really channeled a lot of his father there, and that's what we'll talk about shortly. In fact, it's pretty clear that this Iron Bank plot is going to continue to matter a bit. I don't know where it's going. I don't know how it's going to end, but it's not over. And at the time, it was really jarring, right? She says, "I'll have you paid back in a fortnight." And we're like, what?
That's pretty quick.
That can't be true. She's just saying that. She's just saying that. But no, apparently she was totally right.
Especially after the line of Jon asking Dany, "Am I your prisoner?" And Dany's like, "Not yet." I wonder, is Tycho going to become Cersei's prisoner? But it seems like she's just going to pay him back.
Yeah, because that would be a bad move if she were to do anything to Tycho. Yeah, the bank is too powerful. She does not need that enemy also. Okay, so that's that's a developing plot point. They're going to have to get the loot back to King's Landing that they just got from Highgarden. So we can move on to that, but we'll also discuss it more on Saturday because there seems to be some things to learn from the trailers and stuff about how that may or may not go. Let's talk about Casterly Rock. We got an image of Casterly Rock here that looks pretty cool. Not exactly what we pictured, but it looks cool. And we talked about how something was strange with the way this scene was being set up. The fact that there were not characters that had a lot of tension around them. It was only Grey Worm. It was all these who else is going to be there that we know? And so we figured out that there was something off here, and we also figured out you guessed something tricky is going to happen here, and I guessed that the Unsullied would be off the table either way. They're going to be out of action for a while, even if they win. And we didn't understand what was going to happen. But we got that much right. We did not predict how at all. That was a total surprise. In fact,
I did make the guess that Euron would destroy the fleet and trap them there.
You did.
But I didn't think that it would be connected to them moving on Highgarden. And also, even in the show now, it's not. I don't know if trapped is the right word. They
are trapped basically because Jaime said they took all the food.
Okay, yeah. Well, so
they can leave. They just can't stay there,
right?
And they have to give it up.
They can leave.
They can't hold it,
right? But not just that, they can't sail back. They have to march back, right? So they're effectively removed.
Yes, that's huge because there's two major historical references here that I really enjoy. I always get a tickle out of major historical references, and. First of all, though, the line in the teaser that says Jaime learned from his mistakes. That's the one we said was the most confusing, and we couldn't figure it out because there's so many mistakes we could have think. We did not think of the Whispering Wood. We didn't even consider that one. So good job, show. You fooled us well. So this is two things here. We've seen that Hardhome was a lot like the Battle of Dunkirk. The Battle of Bastards had a lot in common with Kenai. And this is Jaime using the Fabian strategy. The Fabian strategy was one of the Roman consuls, his way of dealing with Hannibal. The thing was, in the war against Hannibal of Carthage, They kept facing him in the field, and he kept winning. So Fabian's like, let's not face him in the field. Let's just run him around, take away his food, take away his bases, not fight him. Just win via attrition. Don't go head up against them. That strategy makes a ton of sense against the best infantry on the planet, right? Just don't fight them. Just stay away. If you're going to fight them, do it when you have walls, defenses, and you can shoot them from a distance and all that. And so they did bleed the Unsullied some. And so that's really cool. And this leads us to another connection. I grabbed let's see, Charles Dunkley, Twitter user, suggests that what's going to happen with the Unsullied next is a lot like Xenophon's Anabasis, the Greek 10,000. They went, a 10,000-man mercenary force was hired by Cyrus the Younger to fight in the Persian Civil War against his brother Artaxerxes. The 10,000 and their allies were winning this major set-piece battle, but then Cyrus was killed. So that ended it. So the Greeks were like, well, we're here. We got to go home. And they were trapped. Like, the Persian leaders invited them to a conference to be like peace talks and murdered all the leaders. So then you have the 10,000 soldiers who have no leaders, and they're so far from home. And so they have this long overland track where they have to meet all these different people who are hostile to them, and they have these hard times of fighting and being stranded and not having enough food. And that's what the Unsullied are going to be dealing with. They got to march overland in hostile territory where we know the enemy's going to try to deny them of supplies.
Dan Carlin has a podcast on that, right?
Dan Carlin does, and so does Daniele Bolelli.
Oh, awesome.
Yes, History on Fire. Shout out to Hardcore History and History on Fire. So that is a great one. I really like that that timing. Now, we wondered what Euron would do next. Well, that was it, apparently, but now we're left with the same question. Now what's Euron going to do? We'll talk about that more on our Saturday Predictions and Theories episode again, because I don't have any immediate guesses. And I don't want to sit here and just make up guesses on the fly, because that's not my strength.
I fear we have this this Ramsay Reek parallel to Euron Yara.
Yeah, I'm worried about that.
The Iron Islands of him torturing her.
We don't need that to be what's next, but it might very well be. Certainly Book Euron is the biggest torturer of all. He's much more of a torturer than Ramsay. He's a different kind of torturer. So we may indeed see that, and that's too bad. But
hopefully not. I don't see how it would tie too much into the plot, other than maybe you are relating to Theon better later, but I'm not sure how important it is with how few episodes there are.
A hard way for them to have common ground. You're like, yeah, we were both tortured really brutally by main series villains. So we have, I guess Shay pulled up the image of the destruction of the ships, or if she didn't, she will now. Really cool, really awesome visual there, just seeing that. And Grey Worm just is sinking like, oh, God, we did not see this coming. Damn it. Stop listening to the clever men. The clever men. Jamie's cleverer. And so
I wish we could get at least one shot of whatever these fire catapults are on the deck of a Greyjoy ship. I think that'd be a neat thing to see.
Yeah, I think it was part of just for the visual representation. Like, it'd be hard for them to show. It would be hard for Grey Worm to see his ships being destroyed. It's a lot more obvious with the flames. You can see which ships are burning. It's kind of from a distance. It'd be kind of hard to translate exactly what's happening. I think people would be confused. So it's a little weird to have these big fireball shooters, but I think it makes sense for like visual storytelling. And
also, it could just be a thing. It's just the reason Euron is dominating. He has better technology.
It's not unrealistic. Yeah, it's not at all like shooting fire from ships is not some crazy unheard of only in fantasy thing. It's realistic enough. Yeah, Greek fire was a thing. That was a thing back in the day. Byzantines used it, etc. So let's see. What else do we have? As far as so this surprise here. That's probably all we have for Casterly Rock. But I will say more about it in the book to show, because some people are just really jarred or off-put by the idea of Jaime abandoning Casterly Rock. I think it makes sense in the context of where they're at. Both Jaime and Cersei are very different people now. And this is Tywin-esque. Like, some people say Tywin would never abandon Casterly Rock. He might if it was out of gold, and Highgarden was full of it. And he had a limited amount of soldiers.
And Cersei told him to.
And Jaime said, there's nothing there for me but memories. Tywin would not. That's not what would keep Tywin holding cash, like the memories. Plus, he totally says, he points out that they can't hold it. We'll get it back. They're going to have to abandon it. Yeah. They can't hold it. We're just going to get it back.
I remember having a thought at some point prior that that I don't think I got out, that something along the lines of Cersei, not wanting to lose her home, Casterly Rock. And I remember thinking at that moment, I don't think Cersei cares about it. I think King's Landing is Cersei's home. She's probably lived there most of her life, or half her life.
Yes, you're right.
And she also seems to be more on this track of being queen. The power is in King's Landing, not at Casterly Rock. I think that Cersei believes that.
Hey, someone mentioned something here. The enforcer says Edmure Tully was sent to Casterly Rock. Yeah, we brought up earlier that there was some confusion about that. Yeah, well, either way now, that's happened. Regardless, the confusion was whether Edmure was still at the Twins and whether Arya just forgot about him and left him, or if he was at Casterly Rock. Well, both bases have been covered now. So yeah, they may have just forgotten about that. I don't know. So yeah,
it seems like they would have showed us, but it's possible that the Lannisters that evacuated Casterly Rock brought Edmure with him.
No, you're right. That's what they wouldn't just leave him there. They took the food. They wouldn't leave the Edmure. They wouldn't leave the valuable hostage.
Yeah. And it'd be hard for them to show us that without giving away what's coming up. But they could show us that in the next episode, that with one line of dialogue, Edmure Tully, we brought him here from Casterly Rock. Well, put him in the dungeons of Highgarden.
Yeah, it's their castle now. They have Highgarden now. They can just stick him there. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. He may end up in King's Landing, though, in the long term.
It's also possible they've just written his character out of the show altogether.
That is entirely possible as well. Now, some people bring up the timing of all this. Given that Euron was just in King's Landing for Jaime, and then somehow he sneaks up behind the Unsullied. Well, I get it. That's a little bit problematic, but Jaime's also marched all the way to Highgarden with Tarly. It's clear that a lot of time has passed, so we shouldn't worry too much about the timing. One, because they're not consistent on delivering timelines that totally fit. And neither is George R. R. Martin, to be fair, though he's better than this. But because there's a lot of time that implies a lot of time, I think it can work. You still have to kind of look the other way a little bit, but it's not too egregious.
I also think that there's something that people don't properly account for, is that the things that we're showing aren't necessarily happening in perfect chronological order. We're seeing a bunch of events that are occurring around the same time, but it's not like each scene is something that happens immediately after the prior scene. We could see a series of events in one area that are stretched out over 3 months, and a series of events that are happening in another area that are stretched out over 3 months. And which period within those 3 months we're seeing aren't necessarily one after the next. They're just within this range. And in fact, while we see that, we could see the series of events that are happening somewhere else happen over a span of 3 days.
Yes.
We see these cuts back and forth to what's going on at Dragonstone with Dany and Jon, and that probably wasn't more than a couple days. That's interspersed with scenes that we're seeing in these other storylines that are spread out over 3 months.
Yeah.
And it's, editing back and forth between storylines keeps us engaged in a bunch of different storylines. It makes it one cohesive episode, allows for parallels and symbolism to be spread through different storylines. It doesn't mean that the timetable of each storyline is exactly in sync with each other. I'm not saying that everything is perfectly handled correctly as far as the flow of time and movement of characters across the board, but I don't think it's as bad as some people think if you just think about the nature of how stories get presented in general.
It's problematic, I agree. It's problematic, but less problematic than it seems on the surface.
In fact, anyone who has seen Dunkirk, it's made very clear with how the story of that movie is presented.
They showed things kind of a little bit out of sequence. Non-linear storytelling, yes. Yeah. Good question from Jacob S. here. Did Tyrion know about the empty gold mines? No, I don't think he did. Because when Tywin dropped that news on Cersei, he was like, "What? Huh?" So I don't know why Tyrion would know that. So yeah, it's a good question. And that speaks to maybe part of why he made this mistake. He thought the location was more important than it was. That was how Jaime outplayed him, was by realizing they'd come for it, and then so he had all this great plan with misdirection and to tie the Unsullied up. It worked really well. But if Tyrion knew the gold mines were empty, he might have planned differently.
You could also imagine Tyrion might have had an inkling of an idea, like somewhere in his work and studies, he might have been thinking about how much gold there is, how much is spent, da-da-da. But then he kills his dad, sees Oberyn killed in front of him, escapes to a different continent, travels in a box, drinks himself half to death. Maybe some lines of thought that he had before were lost,
Yeah, maybe, and I see someone, Jinx Lier points out, maybe Tyrion, or maybe Jaime knew about Tyrion's little secret passage. Like, maybe he knew about his little sneaking way to be with girls without their father finding out.
That's
maybe Jaime knew about that. I don't think he did, but it makes sense. It would add some interesting detail to that, to explaining how Jaime was able to outplay Tyrion so well there. But mostly it was just about learning from his mistakes and going where your enemy doesn't expect, especially when there's such a juicy target, which is where we're going to go next. Let's talk about Highgarden. So, yeah, this was clever. Darren Tucker, Knight of the Forums, points out that Tyrion's mistake regarding Casterly Rock led to this, and Olenna went along with it. She was right not to listen to clever men in the end, because it was Tyrion's idea Tyrion's the one who thought that they would reinforce Casterly Rock severely and not worry about Highgarden. And oops, wrong. So it's pointed out multiple times that Highgarden is crazy rich, so it actually makes a lot of sense for them to take Highgarden. Not only is Olenna not on their side anymore, but two birds with one stone, get rid of her, and get all this cash.
There was, I even noticed watching a second time through, there's sort of a montage. They skipped the battle, which personally I'm okay with. I don't care as much about the details of who stabbed who with the sword as to how it affects the plot of these characters that we're following. We see the army approach, then we see that it's been conquered, you know?
Yeah.
And we see that sort of by Jaime walking through the castle, coming up to Olenna. In that sequence, we see a group of soldiers taking stock of gold. We see like this wagon and they got some paper and they're like stacking up these bars of gold.
Counting the loot.
I think that was very minor, but put in there to show us that's how Cersei's paying back the Iron Bank.
Yep, and it just all became clear. It's like, oh, yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. It makes so much sense. It was another bit of misdirection that we really, you know, if you would pause the episode and really thought about it, you could kind of maybe figure it out. But it's just no time to connect those dots when you're watching the episode live. And it was really clever. We get this final moment here. The episode ends, and a lot of people, you know, we'll miss you, Olenna. It was a good shot, but she had a fantastic final scene. Oh, hang on, let's back up. We got a couple of good questions here. Acre Frey says Tywin told Cersei about Casterly Rock's gold mines in the Red Keep. Does that mean Varys knew about the mine? Well, Varys is supposed to hear just about everything that goes on in there. Maybe they just overlooked that, or maybe Tyrion thought it was a good idea to go after Casterly Rock despite the missing mines. But in which case, it's a worse decision.
Or maybe Varys knew and didn't tell, or you know, if Varys is somehow conniving against Dany.
Yeah. And Stanklepoot points out that skipping the battle at Highgarden completes the Whispering Wood callback. Whispering Wood is not shown on screen. It's not in the books either. It's from Catelyn's perspective, and she's at a safe distance. So she's just sitting there worried, justifiably so, about what's happening in there. And then you hear some of it, you know, told to her afterwards. And that does fit really well here. So I wonder, maybe in the books it'll happen off screen too, if this even happens. That's hard to predict. More on that in our Book to Show episode. So we have Olenna's death this was so well acted on both sides. Olenna kind of stole the scene, but Nikolai Coster-Waldau kicks butt as usual. He's never not good. And this reveal, you know, she says, she needles him first. She's needling him a lot about Cersei and trying to drive that wedge in. And it doesn't seem to be working very well. Jaime's a little agitated by it, but mostly he's like, all right, I'm the winner here. Let the beaten woman, you know, have her last word or whatever. And it's not really working. You know, she points out, you're in love with him. You're never going to, you know, I regret helping you spread this poison. You're going to regret it too. And he's kind of like, yeah, maybe. He's like, yeah, I might regret it later. We'll see. I don't know.
I've done things I knew I'd regret later.
Yeah. And
I'd do Cersei if I knew I'd regret it later.
but it's a setup because he's not really, that's maybe not moving. It's something for him to think about. It's not really moving him more than just to agitate him a little. But when she drops oh, by the way, I killed Joffrey, that gets him. And that may be something that starts to push Jaime and Cersei apart. If that happens, this is the first domino, I think. Because clearly none of these other things, like blowing up the Sept, clearly didn't do it.
Yeah.
Doing, you know, all of this stuff just didn't move Jaime. He's still right there with her. So, Now, here's a confirmation from we watched behind the episode, and Dan and Dave said that as soon as Olenna says this, Jaime knows it's true. So I was going to ask, does he believe her? But Dan and Dave say he does believe her, and I believed it. That makes sense that he would.
I think so too, and I think what's more important here is not that she did it, but that Tyrion didn't do it. I think that
both of those are hugely important. Yes.
Yeah, I think that Jaime, in that moment, his facial expression is where you might expect. I think it'd be reasonable to expect anger, like, "What? You're the one." You know, like he maybe even wants her to have a more painful death after trying to be merciful toward her. But that didn't seem to be his reaction. He didn't seem to get angry at her. He seemed to turn inside, like he was reevaluating information, and I think the main thing he's reevaluating is Tyrion didn't do it. On whatever level I wanted to believe he didn't, now I know he didn't. And you know what? Now that I know, the thing is, here's the thing. I think this is part of what Jaime's going through. It makes sense to have this knee-jerk reaction. I've got to tell Cersei. Tyrion didn't do it.
We got that question from Lady Alicia Everlasting of the Desert Rose. Will Jaime tell Cersei?
But here's the thing. Now, whether or not Jaime goes this far down the thought process, when he tells Cersei, does Cersei go like, "Oh, it wasn't him? Oh, so sorry about that. I guess I love him after all." No, before he killed, before she thought or was accusing him of killing Joffrey, she already didn't like him. She already tried to have him killed, right? And then after that, he still killed Tywin.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like suddenly she's going to turn around from this. Jaime might suddenly turn around from this.
That's why it's a great wedge between Tyrion and between Jaime and Cersei, because you're right. Cersei, it won't move the needle at all on her feelings on Tyrion, but it will move the needle on Jaime's, where at least it very much could.
And it might be that Olenna poisoned Jaime as much as he poisoned her here.
Yes, very good point. With the non-literal poison, with the figurative poison, as she takes the real poison. And also, just logistically, right now he's out in the field. He's not going to send a raven and be like, "Oh, by the way, I just found out that it wasn't Tyrion who killed." Like, he's not going to do that. So we have a super chat from Alex Willer. Shout out to Big Willie. That's the super chat. All right, shout out to Big Willie. Hey, good job, Big Willie. Yes, you don't have to super chat questions. We're fine with doing shout outs as well. Appreciate that, Alex. We're closing in on 800 people here, which we're already at a record, I think, for our own live stream support. But hey, we're doing them a lot more often, and this is our thing now, to do them all the time. So y'all are getting in the rhythm with us, and it's a great thing. Yeah. Okay, but we're not done yet. We got more to go. So I'm really curious where that's going to go. Jaime, I think this is really the first real domino, because it's, like you said, it's something that they will disagree on. They will take very differently. But also, Jaime points out to Olenna, like, "You've let this get out of hand, haven't you? You just don't have control over this anymore." Like, yeah, yep, pretty much. You're right, yeah. So she had all the right things to say there. Really well done. Some of her best acting. And yeah, again, we'll miss you, Olenna. Another one down. Although at least I get to give myself a thumbs up for calling it. Not that it was hard to predict that one. But anyway. Okay.
I was still defaulting against it. It does make sense. I remember thinking it could go either way. Because she's an interesting character, it would suck to remove her. But because she's an interesting character, it'll be more tragic to have her be removed.
Would have loved to see her have a war of words with Euron.
Yeah, that would be good.
Or with Tyrion, just Tyrion and Olenna. Like, they did have their minute. They were in the room together, but they didn't get to really go at it. So, yeah, so maybe there's hope for Jaime, because, Jaime is a beloved character, even though he's, aligned with one of the worst characters, period. He's done a lot of terrible things himself. But people still kind of hope that he ends up on the winning side. He ends up leaving Cersei, and maybe that's too hopeful. But, hey, there's some fuel for that fire now, at least, right? Let's see here. We got some questions. We have Dragon Rider Jinx Lier says, "Will Sean actually dance if we make it to 6K? We will make a Sean dancing video if we get to 6,000 and the 24-hour stream. We'll do both of those things. Actually, we'll do them together. We're going to have to find things to do during a 24-hour stream, so dancing will be a part of it.
Man, we might do that for 1,000.
Ooh. He might do that for 1,000.
I just want to make a dance video anyway.
All right then, History of Westeros dance videos. We've been calling Radio Westeros the Radio Westeros dancers, but Sean is the real the real History of Westeros dancer. Oh, we're over 800 now. All right, very cool. All right, we got more questions. Ben Smith, Bronzion gets more lines, recognizes that Sansa knows what she's talking about, and seems eager to help. He's definitely getting a larger role as the season goes on, isn't he? Absolutely. Thanks for pointing that out. We've mentioned it a few times, but it bears repeating. We believe that this is a meta evidence for Littlefinger's death, because once he's out of the way, someone's got to lead those Vale Knights. Those Vale Knights are got to be important in terms of what's happening just all around, not just in the north, but maybe in the south as well. And Bronzion is a great call for that. He's, as we pointed out before, he's already sent a son to the Night's Watch, and he hates the Lannisters, and yeah, it's all lining up well for Bronzion. Good Rupert Vansittart, I believe is his real name. I believe his role, he may his season ending of season 7 and season 8 role may be his most screen time. So I think that got a lot to look forward to, and we do too with him. Once he gets the leather on those breastplates properly. Here are some live chat questions that Ashay has been gathering. Good job, a lot of these. From Ashley Lynn, Mel tells Varys, I have to die in this strange country, just like you. Is that what he heard in the flames? That he would die in Westeros? And could that explain his dedication to the realm? Well then, I have never considered that possibility. Yeah, he just doesn't want to say what he heard. It was the voice, the chilling, the sound of the voice that was just as chilling. I never really considered that it was the words he said. I thought maybe it was in a foreign tongue.
I think that would make me want to not be in the realm. If that's
yeah, go the other way. Just go east. Like Westeros is where I'm going as far east as I can. So, yeah. Darren Tucker with another clever question here. Was the whole Jorah grayscale episode a way of depriving Dany of her only real tactical military leader at the start of her campaign? Well, we pointed that out. That was that Barristan was removed, and that allowed them to make mistakes that Barristan would not have made. And Jorah probably wouldn't have made those mistakes either. So yeah, maybe it was an awkward way of getting him out of the way for a while. But yeah, that does fit. That would make some sense there. Okay, so Alex Willard, thanks for saying my name right. Who will run the Riverlands with no phrase? Yeah, that's a good question. Like Cersei and Jaime were kind of talking about how they didn't have they were kind of out of the picture right now.
Well,
it feels like it's in chaos right now.
Maybe is Harrenhal in chaos? Is the Dreadfort in chaos?
Well, Harrenhal is ruled by Peter Baelish. That's his. So
right, but he's not there running it.
But he presumably left arrangements. But there's no phrase left to run it. That's the point.
The
Arya probably didn't kill the steward and all the people that were.
I mean, he did leave Walder's wife alive. Like it's as much as Sansa is the lady of the Dreadfort. I don't know her name. Walda. She's the lady of the twins,
that's not Walda.
Right?
That's not Walda. No, there's no there may be a female Frey out there. That's true. That may be who claims it. It'll probably get claimed by the child of one of the Frey brides that's out there somewhere. That would make sense. I mean, the show's not going to cover that, I don't think, but that would make sense. I see someone say that it should be given to Bronn. That actually could happen. I mean, I don't know if he'll ever get to take hold of it, but they might be like, okay, here's that reward we were promising you. You can never run. I don't know if it'll get to that point, but that would be appropriate. I like that idea. Very cool. What is this? Speed dating with Sean, how to fill at least an hour of a 24-hour stream. You guys have great comments. All right. Document has contact. Okay, so there's more to that. Yes. Ileana says, perhaps you have Sean go on a live stream date as part of the 24-hour stream. Jesse now asked if Sean was single. Oh, hey, how about... Yes, he is.
I am
Ladies, yes, he is.
That's how it got started.
Both Sean and his beard are single. So you can two birds with one stone right there. All right, more questions from the chat commenters. Another from Darren Tucker. Will Jaime learning that Olenna killed Joffrey and not Tyrion be what turns Jaime from Cersei to Tyrion's side? Okay, I guess we've already covered that, so I think so. Astute observation, no. But we'll move on since we covered it already. Rob Storm, Q&A. Does Mira have a role going forward? Will she explain more to Sansa what went up in the north with Bran, or head home? Yeah, I think head home, because, I mean, it's one thing you say, Bran can just see that Alan Reed is there with his powers, but maybe not, because he made that point about I can't just focus on anything. I'm still learning how to control all this. Alan Reed, we've talked about how he might be brought into the story. We mentioned that she said his name in the opening scene. Well, not the opening scene, the post-credits scene in the first episode, the non-cold open first scene. When they meet at the wall, she says her father's name. She's like, Alan Reed, my father, blah, blah, blah. So that's my pick, that she goes home. Maybe she kind of has I do think maybe she'll have a little word with Sansa first, like, yeah, he's messed up, like, this is what happened, like, this is what he saw. She can explain what happened better than he can at this point, because he's just so kind of out there in the with his head in a million places at once. That might actually make more sense.
That I had forgotten about, but she did have, I don't know quite what to call it, a look of concern as Sansa and Bran were, being reunited. She was looking on with this sort of concern and curiosity about how this would play out.
By the way, if you folks ever see our camera shake, it's a cat. That's what's happening. A cat makes our camera shake every once in a while. All right, next question from Flo Florenson. Who will be the person to bring up a possible marriage between Jon and Daenerys? I think Tyrion. I think Tyrion. He's already been the back channel guy. He's already seeing how much they have in common. He's the politician that sees what needs to happen. It could be Varys.
Loaded
Could
question.
be Melisandre. Melisandre just left.
Could be no one.
It could be no one. I see it happen. I think they need a political marriage. Might not happen. Let's assume it does, though. If it happens, who would be the one? My first pick is Tyrion. I think Varys would be my second call.
Maybe Sansa.
Oh, yeah. I didn't think of that. That's a good call. It could be Sansa. Yeah.
I mean, she's been part of 2 political marriages already. It would be on her mind.
Good call. Good call. Yeah, it could be one of them. All right, Johan Abitan. Has any Lord Commander left the wall before Jon? Left, as in, I'm not sure what you mean by left, but of course, we sort of answered part of the weirdness of this, and them not bringing it up yet, which I think they will. But Lord Commanders have left the wall to go do battle, but not like this.
They haven't stepped down from command.
Right. I think that's a precedent, a new precedent. But of course, someone dying and coming back is kind of a precedent too. So, also the White Walker showing up again is a precedent. Apparently, they never showed up after the wall was built before that. So, a lot of precedents being set. Times are changing, as you said. Will Sam run into his dad again? If so, what will happen? I'm guessing no. I'm guessing Dickon and Randall are toast, and almost literally toast. I think they get burned.
Oh, you think?
I think I think there's going to be a showdown. You know, we've all been predicting a field of fire from trailers and all these other things that lead up to that possibility. And it was the king of the Reach and all his descendants that were burned to death on the field of fire. So it kind of feels like a possible parallel about to happen here. So that's my guess.
I'm not sure. I don't know what's likely, but I know what I want. I want for Dickon and Sam to come to terms with each other. That's what I would like to see.
That'd be nice.
And what I was sort of predicting is that Randall would stay with whatever army and leadership role he has and would send Dickon after Sam to get that sword back. And then my hope was at that moment they would talk to each other and Dickon would see that Sam's not as worthless as his dad thinks and maybe would want to support him, would let him get away, you know.
Here's a super chat from Kelly Valance. Could Littlefinger offer Sansa food stores as an enticement? I believe he's been sitting on things for planned profiteering. That sort of ties into some book stuff, but that doesn't mean it won't happen here. So I won't go I want to go into detail on the book aspect of that, but that's the kind of thing he would do. You know, he'd be like, to ingratiate him, to make himself more necessary, to prove that he's needed. He might be like, look what I can do. Look at these other things I can help with. Like, yeah, you hate me, but I'm valuable. You need me. You know, I could see him doing that. That's a kind of clever kind of way to put himself back in the I'm needed category. Because he's going to look for ways to do that. He's going to look for ways to be useful, look for ways to make Sansa not hate him.
It's also worth noting that, obviously, Littlefinger has ulterior motives, and usually has dual reasons when he does something, even though it might seem helpful to people. But he did show up with the Knights of the Vale and rescue Jon in the Battle of the Bastards, and hasn't, demanded something in return, right?
It's true.
And he continues to pledge fealty up here in the north. He's, hey, White Walker, sure. You need much? Sure. He's going along with everything that's been demanded of him. And imagine if he did also. Here's some grain, too. Maybe it's all ulterior, tricky ways to get in Sansa's pants. But maybe he just genuinely loves Sansa, or is worried about the White Walkers, or wants to solidify his position as a legitimate leader in the realm.
I mean, he would like to do that, and he wants to be recognized. He wants to be considered legit. He wants to be seen as, worthy of a noble title and all that. And if he's going to do things the right way, I mean, he's going to obviously continue to do his subterfuge and his intriguing, I would think, and probably still be creepy. But if he's smart, and he is smart, he's going to also do good, positive things to make him, to do the things that a good leader is supposed to do to make it look right. He understands optics.
Littlefinger's not a very popular character, but the fact is he's not too dissimilar from a bunch of other characters. He's got this ambition to get into power, and along the way, he's, we'll say, assassinated a few people. But what did Robert Baratheon do to get into power? What has Dany done to get into power? There's a bunch of other characters.
Robert maybe not the best example, because he was directly threatened with death, and that's what caused him to rebel.
True.
Which was violent. But you're right. There's a lot of examples of people that I can think of good examples of Jaime. Like, people justify what Jaime does far more than what Littlefinger did, like, because he's just not as likable. I think Jaime is not nearly as bad as Littlefinger, but I do think it's a lot closer than people would say.
But even once Robert got into power, where maybe you can talk about how and why he got there, he's bad. Literally trying to assassinate a baby girl.
Yeah, he was bad.
Stannis burns a baby girl, and he's the worst hero. But people don't talk about what a villain Robert was.
Varys points out that Robert was a bad king because he just didn't care. But when he did do things, they were crappy. He spent too much money, threw away the crown's money, tries to assassinate a little girl. Yeah, all these. It was almost better when he did nothing.
Yeah.
It was like, bad when he does nothing, but it's worse when he does things. So, let's see. Here's more questions. We've got Mr. E. Do you see a problem with getting the gold back to King's Landing? I don't want to talk too much about that. I think yes, but I don't want to go into detail because a lot of it, there are some absolute spoilers from the trailers. So I can't really answer that without being spoilery. So we will absolutely talk about that on Saturday's live stream. But yes, like, it shouldn't be easy to get that back. I mean, it's kind of a logistical thing that they could just gloss over, but I don't think they will. I think they're going to make that a plot point. So, but again, I won't go any farther than that. Can a dragon, from Jacob Alvis, can a dragon wear armor even during off battle time while ranging like a runner using a weighted vest/ankle weights? I don't know that they can't, but there's no historical precedent that I know of for them. The older a dragon from book canon, and I assume book canon's in place whenever the show doesn't put in its own thing to cover that up. The older a dragon is, the tougher its scales are. They harden over time. Even because dragons can be like Vhagar. Something I actually said this wrong in a previous episode, that Vhagar died second. Vhagar died last. Well, last after Meraxes and Balerion. Vhagar was like 181 when he died. And they described her as kind of slow, but still ferocious, and just huge and just ridiculously tough armor. So maybe for a really young dragon that would be useful, but I think if you put armor on the dragon, it might impede its ability to fly.
The weight, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm guessing maybe a little leather, but I don't know if that would even be enough to help. Question from Sanrixian. Do you think the Brotherhood or Arya will arrive at Winterfell first? Yeah, tough one. I think
they'll be together.
Could be together.
Arya might link up with the Brotherhood, and then together they travel to Winterfell.
I would have kind of thought the Brotherhood would have gotten there by now, given how long ago they started heading north. But, again, it's non-linear storytelling. We don't have to assume that that's already happened, even though we've seen it already. So I'm not worried about that. But still, I would have expected it by now. So, but also, Arya's had a whole episode to go there, and I'm going to guess Arya. But it's a guess. I have at least some reason for that, but this is mostly pure guesswork. Feel the same way, or?
Sort of, but I still think that she's going to link up with the Brotherhood first. That's what I think.
Okay.
Although I was thinking she would at some point encounter Melisandre. That seems less likely now.
Okay, well, we are starting our descent into the end of this episode. We managed to keep it around 2 hours, but we're not done yet. We've got time for more questions.
Can we get some more questions about me being single?
Well, we'll see. Okay, so there's I see some other questions flying by. I know we're keeping an eye out. Here's a question from Matt Graham. What does Dany hang on to when flying? We see her grabbing onto the scales there, but it is a little awkward. I kind of think that she should get a saddle.
Maybe Tyrion can help her design one.
Tyrion designed Bran a saddle, so yeah. Why are you single? Healer 180 says.
No one can keep up with me.
He dances too well. Let's see.
The girls are turned off by my drinks.
Yeah, Stephanie Vale says, "Why isn't Tyrion?" But that might be it. Stephanie Vale says, "Why isn't Tyrion building a saddle?" Yeah, we kind of expected he would by now. I thought that would be one of the early things he does to help, but I think they're just kind of playing coy with the whole dragon stuff. They're just like they are with the White Walker stuff. They're getting this. They put it right in our face, and then like, wait, hold on, we got other stuff to do first. I think they're doing it with the dragon stuff. The dragon's like they dive bomb Jon, and just like, whoa, what happened there? But there's going to be some close-ups and some more dragon action, but they're just it's storytelling. They're waiting on that. Marcus Swain, how do I pep talk my beard into that greatness? You can't. No words can do that. No words can describe it. No words can create it. Another question here from Charles Dunkley. I'd like to think Arya is already in Winterfell wearing someone else's face to get the lay of the land before revealing herself, but I doubt the show will do that. That's a cool idea, and I could see that happening. She wants to make sure, because she was already like Really? You're lying. I mean, she should know by traveling the countryside. She probably would hear other people talking about it or have opportunities to ask. But I like the idea because, yeah, she doesn't know what's up, and why not use her powers to protect herself and to be, to do it that way?
Given things that she's heard, she might assume that it's dangerous to go there in the first place. So.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been times when Sansa ostensibly was Lady of the Dreadfort. Oh, I'll go there. My sister said, oh, that might not have been a safe thing to do, right?
Jacob S. says, there's a great fiction book about the 10,000 Greek soldiers called The Mocked. And yeah, there's some other historical fiction books. There's one that I've read that I'm trying to think of, and it's escaping me, but it's a great story. It's a great real world story. Alexander the Great slept with a copy of it under his pillow. That's how, and so, I mean, of course, at the time, there weren't very many books, period, but especially, accounts like that. But there's a reason that one survived the ages, that story still exists.
There probably weren't many pillows either at that time.
But when you're an emperor like Alexander, you got the pillows. Yeah. You get the one pillow that the army has. All right, what else do we have? I need to look at the chat myself. Dance battle. People want you to do. Yeah, this James Lambert says this podcast is extremely hairy. To cut back on that, I'm wearing a hat. That's the whole point here. I'm trying to yeah, I agree. It's getting out of control here. Marcus says, come visit and we'll make sure that happens. And Duke Chronic says, I'll dance battle Chris Brown. Adam Weiss says, how did Santa's army make it past the wall, and how could the walkers use this? Well, they did that by sailing around it. And, there is some chatter about the possibility of them freezing the sea and walking around it. That is uncertain. There's a lot of other ways maybe they could do using magic, or I don't know. But Eastwatch by the Sea seems to be where that maybe is going to happen. But hey, if we take a lesson from this episode, Eastwatch could be a diversion. You brought this up already, but we could restate that. You suggested maybe that's a diversion. Maybe the walkers are more intelligent than we're giving them credit for. Maybe they're going to make an attack at Eastwatch to draw the eye of mankind to that spot. Meanwhile, they're just coming around the other side, all the way on the west, something like that.
Or even not necessarily a diversion, but just a multi-pronged attack.
Yeah,
maybe they assault the main gate, the east and the west all at once.
That's what the Unsullied did. Even though they had the secret passage, they're like, focus their attention right here while we sneak in and come up from them behind. Yeah.
I've been wondering a lot lately about the potential intelligence of the White Walkers and what they want, what their goals are. I think, again, that's the type of thing you could just probably do a whole podcast or series of podcasts on. But I wonder if they have the capability to build a ship. I wonder if they have the capability to give instructions that will last. Like, could they tell a horde of whites, go around to the east and head south and attack anyone you come in contact with? Or do they need to be there with them to guide the army,
B-Word says, why do we think the Brotherhood will go to Winterfell? They may head straight up to the East Coast. Well, we did say the same possibility. And if they do that, it cuts out a lot of their need to address Sandor meeting with Arya and or Sansa and Littlefinger too. It maybe just dodges the need for them to handle that interaction. And so that might be how they handle it. But it just makes sense that they would stop at Winterfell because it's right in the middle of the North. They might want to let go, hey, we're here to sign up to help, not just show up at the wall and be like, hey, we're going to, because they didn't say anything about joining the Night's Watch. Maybe that's what their intent is. But they didn't say that. They just said they want to go up and help fight for humanity. They mentioned nothing about joining the Night's Watch, as far as I can recall. And Sansa makes that point about how everyone's going to start coming to Winterfell because this is the most defensible spot. We got to bring all the food here, blah, blah, blah. So if Sandor and the Brotherhood are traveling north and they hear that everyone's going to Winterfell, then they would go there too. Not nearly a sure thing, though. I totally agree that it's worth pointing out that they may not go there at all. So. Another reason, by the way, to think that they're going to go there is the very early trailer shots that show Jon with Beric, and some other people out beyond. But that could be because he goes to Eastwatch and meets them there.
Right.
So there's definitely multiple ways this can go down. Another one in the document here, says Ashaya. What do we think of Cersei's mini breakdown when she asked Ilaria, why did you do that? That was the very last of her humanity. Was that the very last of her humanity slipping away? Yeah, I really liked that slip of emotion. It was just part of how amazing her performance was there. And because she just it wasn't, She wasn't the queen in that moment. She was a mother.
She's trying to keep her cool, her air, her power this whole time, and for a little moment there, she like let a little emotion slip out, a little personal frustration slip out there. That was a good moment.
Totally agree.
And another thought that I had there in that speech she gave, I wonder who Cersei's favorite was.
I
wonder
went
if it
looking.
was Tommen.
I think it was Myrcella
Myrcella?
I mean, it may have been Tommen at one point, but she always respected that Myrcella was the bravest and the smartest, and Tommen, she said, turned against her.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
That's my guess, but it may have been different prior. And I went looking in the book to see if I could find any examples of that. I didn't have much time, and it wasn't the most important question to me be researching in this limited time before the episode. But I couldn't find anything obvious. I searched for favorite and Cersei, and there was nothing. And I searched for favorite and child, and I couldn't find it. So she may have said it a different way, but I don't know if she hints at who her favorite was.
Even if it was never said, it's still neat to think about.
Yeah,
it might have been.
Absolutely. Okay, let's take a couple more and call it a night, folks. More in the dock. Thank you, Ashea. Jay Beach, do you think Sam will find out about Jon or the wedding between Rhaegar and Lyanna in the old papers he has to rewrite? Yeah, that it could be. It's it is wide open what Sam could find in those documents. It's almost like a Deus Ex library, like, or Chekhov's books. Something is coming out of those books. We don't know what yet. This is a very valid possibility. Maybe not. I would think that is maybe more likely to have been kept secret and not written down. But if they need to find a way to prove that it happened, having it written down would do that.
Also, keep in mind if it was written down in secret. These are books that were locked up, so
good point.
Potentially, at least.
Yeah, and here we go. Fergie Oliver, how will the Brotherhood be received by the Wildlings? I think they'll be okay with them. I think they'll like them. I think they'll respect them more than most because these are common. These are except for Beric, they're mostly commoners who are just defending the realm, taking it upon themselves to defend the realm and help common people. I think that they would find some common ground. The Wildlings can respect that these guys, are doing their own thing. They're not, following any of the kings or queens.
They're probably wearing wildling pants, right?
Hopefully those things have a lot of insulation because it's cold up there.
Let it be known, by the way, I take my wildling pants off in the bedroom.
Sir Hype the Dank says, so Jon can't give Dany men, but could he offer military guidance? Send some military commanders to help. Just don't know what he has to offer. Yeah, I think so. We talked a lot of times about
Royce. You could send Royce.
Ooh, Royce, yeah. Send the Valemen down there. I mean, he needs them in the short term, but maybe he can get away with sending them down there for a little while just to, get Dany. If sending the Valemen south gets the dragons north, that's worth it. So it may come down to that. And absolutely, we talked that Dany has all kinds of great political advisors. Tyrion is her #1 military advisor, and it's not going well. His advice has not gone well, and he blames himself for not anticipating Euron's move, which, yeah, they should have at least been on guard. They maybe shouldn't have known he would attack right there, but they weren't. They were totally caught off guard by that, and that's just not thinking. They should have known that Euron, they know he's out there somewhere, and he's working with Cersei and doing his thing. They should not have been caught so off guard by that. So, yeah, I think in general, Jon is going to be able to help with that a lot. The whole concept of the whole military angle is not going well for her. Dark Sister and Bright Roar. Oh, here we go. Felicia Ilana, will we say lost swords like Blackfire, Dark Sister, and Bright Roar? Well, we saw Widow's Wail come back, and that was not that's a more recent sword. That's half of ice, and it was in an appropriate place. I was a little worried that it would be used to kill Olenna since it's Widow's Wail, and she's the queen of the widows there. But luckily we were spared that. She got as clean a death as possible. But no, I don't think Blackfire and Dark Sister and Bright Roar are going to make it into the show. I really hope they do in the books. But I have my doubts there as well. But not strong doubts, just some doubts. Lola Dixie, will Dany have any more visions? I think no. But because it was the visions she had were triggered at the House of the Undying. Maybe Melisandre would have been a vehicle for that, but she just left.
Yeah, I was really hoping we would have a scene of Melisandre asking people to look into the flames, and that they would see the same thing that Sandor saw.
Jinx Lier says, Jon, dancing in the streets, wildling in the sheets. I think that's a good place to end it with that comment. Okay, everybody. Thank you all for the questions. Thanks you all for attending live. I know a lot of you guys were having fun in the chat room, even if you didn't get your questions answered. But you can always send them to us offline, and we may handle them in the book to show, or especially if they involve predictions, we will handle them on the Saturday live stream. So we hope to see you on Wednesday's book to show episode and or Saturday's predictions and theories live stream. That's going to be, the Saturday episode should be around 2 Eastern Standard, and the Wednesday one I think is going to be at 6 TBA, but we'll have that settled very shortly. And thank you again. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Ashea, for running production and handling all these questions. It's a lot of work behind the camera here that is making this work really well. So, again, much appreciation for that.
Follow us on Twitter, by the way. I'm Dancing Sean, Westeros.
At Westeros History and at Miranese Not for Ashea. Yes, good call, Sean. And till Wednesday and or Saturday and next Monday, and of course Sunday's episode, there'll be more to come. And we'll be enjoying it with you all. Valar rewatch us, Valar restream us, Valar rebeard us, all that. Adios. Oh, wait.
I didn't stop it.
You didn't stop it. Okay, I forgot to do the Patreon credits. Thank you, Ashea. See, that's why she's so important over here. Okay, shout outs for our patrons. Let's go. Peers of the Realm include Mysterious BR, Hand of the King, Lord Jim the Fortuitous of Wars and Politics of Ice and Fire blog and Warden of the West. Lord George Stormsville the Cunning is Lord of the Chiliad and Warden of the East. Cabeth the Unfrozen is Lord of the Bricks and Castle Crimson Light, Defender of the Old Gods and Warden of the North. By the way, folks, there's a lot of new patrons whose names haven't made it on the website yet. I apologize. We're just so swamped right now. A lot of people are still owed nicknames. We'll get that done soon, too. We'll be able to do some of that this week. We're doing a few at a time. So if you're waiting on yours, we're making our way towards you. And you'll get your shout outs soon if you haven't gotten them yet.
Also, I want everyone to know how much I appreciate this. I love imagining all these characters as being part of Westeros and the stories that they would have and which armies they would be on and so on.
Right on. Also, Lord Osborne of Castle Werewoods is spreading the old gods by planting werewood saplings in the Reach, Stormlands, and Crownlands. And his motto is "Our roots run deep." And there's rumors he's going to start doing this overseas in places like Bravos. Don't have a lot of trees. Well needed. Also, we have Lord James Tuttle. I'm sorry, was that a note for me?
No.
No. Yeah, okay, Lord James Tuttle is... I'm on the wrong page. Lord James Tuttle is the King of the Stepstones and Narrow Sea, commander of the Royal Fleet consisting of the Narrow Fleet led by the flagship Caraxes and the Bloodstone Fleet led by the flagship Prince Daemon. This is highly scandalous. Lord James Tuttle was our master of ships, and he stole our navy to run off and become king of the Stepstones and the Narrow Sea.
Is there precedent for that?
Yes, there is. He is following the footsteps of other classic pirates and kings of the Narrow. He's not a pirate anymore. He's ascended to above that level, but some people are going to view him as a pirate. But he carries himself with more noble bearing than that. More on that in future episodes. It's a developing situation. Our Blood Rider is Koholkoli, master of the bow, called Sunpiercer, who revenges those who are on the wrong side of justice. Important role to play. Flaming arrow to the face from the talented female archer. Our small council is now one person short, given this Master of Ships scandal. Lord James Inkblade, however, is still our Scholar Knight, Master of Whisperers, who didn't warn me this was coming. Grand Maester Saria of the Barrows is Cinder of the Citadel. Lord Robert Jacobs is Master of Coin. Rosie the Clever is Master of Laws. Lady Direliz of Castle Nyaki is the Alpha Patron. Lord Dan of the Red Mountains and Castle Great Bell is Breaker of the Second Stone. Lord Skip of the Veldt is Lord of Castle Ganges. Gregor the Toasty is Lord of the Bread Fort. Alicia Everlasting of the Green Blood is Lady of Desert Rose. Lord Ryan of Castle Stonegate is Guardian of the Rocky Mountain Pass. Lord Garin de Haviland is of Devil's Hand Keep. Ashlyn Winter is the Hawk's Eye and Lady of Castle Skyfall. Lady Mikkel of Moonacre is leader of the Werewood Protectorate Alliance. The Lord of the Halls of Castle Hillcrest is wielder of the Valyrian Steel Machete Everglazed. Lord Alistair Whitaker is Lord of the Dawnhold. Lord Bemmy Snugglebunny is guardian of the hidden 100-acre werewood and holder of the Vorpal Snugglebunny. Lord Brandon Brewer of Castle Blackroon is Soren Alesmith to House Stark. Did I skip Gregor the Toasty, Lord of the Bread Fort? Well, if I didn't, he's in there twice. If I did, there it is. Brian the Defender is Lord of the Spear Fort and of the Freelands, last scion of Clan McCulloch, Strength and Courage. Lord Brandon Brewer of Castle Blackroon is Soren Alesmith to House Stark, Grand Master of the Sithamaster's Guild and Keeper of the Buzz. The Bastard of the Wolfswood is first forester of the old gods, sworn to House Iron Werewood. Motto, listen for the silence. King's Justice is Stir Troy the Steady, wielder of the Valyrian steel blade Fate. We have our Queen's High Council, which we're supposed to have Ashea read, but we forgot to set that up, so I'll read it this time, and we'll set that up for another time. We don't want to miss the shoutouts, though. Lady Jane of House Celtigar is the Emerald of the Evening, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Axe Painkiller, mistress of the Sea Eagles, and mistress of ships. We have another couple to add to that later. Our Kingsguard is commanded by Lord Commander Sir Christopher Dane of Starfall, Sentinel of the Torrentine. Our Queen's Guard is Lord Commander Hema Hillmanth, the Sellsword Sentinel. He is retired as a Sellsword Captain. The Whispering Children are without a commander now. He is now commanding Ashea's Queen's Guard. And we will work on the shoutouts from her as well. That is coming soon. Also want to give thanks to our our Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, who is Lord Commander Daenerys Flint, avenging the memory of brave Dany. Also, backing her up, First Ranger Fabian Flowers, the Bastard of Greenshield, First Builder Patchface of Motley Wisdom, First Steward Sir Jurian of the Torrentine, called Palewind, and a couple other fun ones. I like to throw out a few. This is something I'm doing differently now. I like to throw out some of the ones that don't get regular shout-outs because I think they're fun or good names or what have you. I'm going to go ahead and give a shout-out to Lady Lily Twinflower of House Melrose, longtime supporter, as well as we have Archmaester Alyssa, keeper of the Werewood Archives, Archmaester McConkey, Archmaester McMonkey, whose ring and rod and mask are Tainite, as well as our friends over at Podcast Winterfell, who do great recaps, and they have a call-in show. It's a much different way to interact with podcasters. They actually let you call in and talk directly to them, so it's a little more of a hands-on thing, a little more intimate. So if that's your thing, it's a lot of fun. Check them out. And unless Sean has anything else to say, we'll call that a day.
Anything else I have to say, it'll be on Twitter.
All right, cool. So for Ashea, for Sean, and for myself, Aziz, and my Star Cat, which I'm excited to take off because this thing's hot. See you later, everybody.